So let's take a look at what confronts the peloton today. They leave Antwerp and make their way to the top of the Mur de Huy. It's 159 kilometres. There's 4 categorised climbs and they all come at the back end of the stage. The final one is to the top of the famous Mur de Huy, which is used in Flèche Wallonne, that spring classic midweek in April, where we see the likes of Alejandro Valverde lock horns with classic specialists in the shape of Philippe Gilbert. Today we expect to see Valverde amongst the thick of the action, but perhaps it will be an occasion where Vincenzo Nibali tries to claw back some of the time he lost yesterday. The Mayor of Antwerp ready to get things started for what will be the neutral start. The rider from Lotto Jumbo NL, who's sitting towards the front, that is Sepp Vermaak, one of the Belgians on that team. They had a frustrating day yesterday. They had Wilco Kelderman involved in a few crashes. He conceded a big chunk of time. Robert Gesink said that it was a day of pure frustration for him.
6% average gradient as we are gearing up for the stretch. So of course put your hands together and make a ton of noise to welcome the riders of the
Fabian Cancellara, he said that he was a little surprised to get the leader's jersey yesterday. His ambitions were, or his plans were, to try and defend his position yesterday. Likewise today up the Mur de Huy, and then attack the Pavé tomorrow to take yellow. It's arrived a day early. Now he has to hold on up this brutal final climb. And the man in the white jersey, Tom Dumoulin, he has stated that he's keen to try and take the yellow jersey tomorrow. He's 6 seconds behind Fabian Cancellara. And whilst cycling is popular in the Netherlands, the sport of bike racing is even more popular in Belgium. And the countdown for the rollout, the beginning of stage 3 for the neutral zone at least. And there was the Italian national champion, Vincenzo Nibali, one of the men who conceded time yesterday to Alberto Contador and Chris Froome. Well, Race Radio is now trying to tell us something, but we can't quite make it out. It was a little bit broken up. Yellow jersey, that's been worn by Fabian Cancellara. The green jersey with Andre Greipel. The white jersey with Tom Dumoulin. The King of the Mountains jersey, that has not been awarded yet. Today we get the first points in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. Looks like the flag is almost ready to come in. Team's classification, that is being led by BMC Racing. The flag is in. And it's Europcar, the first to attack. Looked like Brian Nierlou, who was the rider going off the front. Martin Alminger was certainly there with him and looking to get into the break. Just as we expected when we saw his presence at the head of affairs throughout that neutral zone. Here he is, Alminger. Serge Pals is the rider who was there for MTMQ Becker, the young Belgian who was looking for his opportunity at the front. Martin Alminger back in 2007 when he won the Tour Down Under. Nierlou is the rider from Europcar, 25-year-old. He's had 3 stints as a stagiaire for Europcar, which is effectively a short-term apprentice with the team before they actually signed him up. They had a look at him at the end of 3 seasons before giving him a contract. It took a little while to get convinced. He's now managed to get a spot on the team and get a spot at the Tour. There is number 125, Brian Nierlou, in his first attempt at the Tour de France. He did ride the Tour of Spain last year, and unfortunately, he didn't make it all the way through. So he's yet to finish a Grand Tour. He is the rider in that lead group of the least experience. And they are unforgiving roads in the Flemish part of Belgium. They're normally quite rough concrete roads, little gaps that often run up the centre as well, that you have to pay great attention to when you're back in the main peloton. Here's Serge Pauwels. Well, mission one for the season accomplished for MTM Qhubeka, and that was getting the invitation to the Tour de France. Serge is aware of what's required to win stages in Grand Tours. He managed to win a stage riding for the Cervelo team at the Giro d'Italia back in 2009. Unfortunately for him, though, he didn't go across the finish line in first place. The Italian rider Leonardo Bertagnoli went across the line in first position, but was later disqualified. And Serge Pauwels was elevated to the winner of the stage a little later on. Number 167 at the back. That is Dan Martin, the Irishman, who has big ambitions on today's stage.
Amazing. It actually is a little bit dangerous sometimes as well, because everybody now has a camera at the side of the road if they've got themselves a smartphone, and the number of people who think that they can put their hands in front of these bike riders to get themselves a very clever selfie. But please don't ever forget, these guys are riding along very often at around about 50 kilometers an hour, and if you get hit by 80 kilograms at 50 kilometers an hour, it's going to hurt you and them. Well, they've settled in now. I think they're very happy with the fact that they've got this four-man leading group, but they're still looking at a long way to go, around about 3 hours of racing. Once they start to get down to what I call the bottom part of the course, once they get to that first climb, the Côte de Boissot, that's when it'll start to get very interesting, because everyone will be fighting to stay towards the front. Those climbs are not seriously difficult climbs in their own right, but they are very narrow, and the descents away from them are narrow, so you want to start them in the first 25 positions if you can. The climb just before the final climb of the day that comes in at around about 5 kilometers to go, the Côte de Chérave, it's only given a fourth category climb, which means the first rider over the top will only get himself a single point. But it's around about 8%, so if anybody's feeling a little bit frisky at that point of the race, that's an ideal launch pad to try and get clear and get a good clean run at the start of the Mur de Huy, because sometimes the most important thing about the Mur de Huy is the positioning for the start of the climb. As we look here at Alberto Contador, who's finished well on this climb in the past, finished third once in Flèche Wallonne. Ian Stannard, just a little bit further back in the Sky jersey, you might just have noticed the Union flag around his jersey. And the rider just over to the right in the pink helmet there, that's the champion of Portugal, Rui Costa. Costa, no stranger to winning stages in the Tour de France. He won a stage a couple of years ago up to the top of Superbès. And there he is. He's ridden well this year. He finished third in the Critérium de Dauphiné, as well as winning the sixth stage. He's in the white jersey. Nervous moments for everybody, but they haven't really began this chase in earnest. I think they were happy once they saw that the breakaway of four riders had established itself. But again, as we saw on yesterday's stage, I think the three strongest riders in that group are Barta, as we mentioned yesterday, 4 times a national time trial champion, Martin Elmiger, Serge Pauwels, with a bit of assistance from the French rider from Europcar. Europcar always looking, and they were obviously looking for the early breakaway today, because Thomas Voeckler was right at the front when we came up to the starting line.
Beautiful blue skies now, and the shadows reflecting the day. Temperatures absolutely perfect. What a contrast to yesterday. The organisers, well, deservedly are patting themselves on the back after 2 days of racing, because all the journalists are saying what a fantastic Tour de France already. So different, not boring, big bunches racing for the sprint at the end of the day. A real bike race this week.
Well, it's something every day. I think today we know exactly. Today is sort of a mini Flèche Wallonne, as the team manager for the Trek Factory Racing said, and he didn't think that it would be ideal for Fabien Cancellara, but certainly if he was to lose the yellow jersey today, tomorrow is a mini Paris-Roubaix, and certainly I'd have to say that Fabien Cancellara will be looking for that.
Now, the man on the far side here in the Alpecin colours there, that's Warren Barguil. I'll tell you, he's a man who's riding high at the moment in the overall situation. 22nd, only 41 seconds off one of the favourites there, which is TJ Van Garderen. He's looking very relaxed right now, and I would say he's feeling pretty pleased with his performance yesterday. First big test.
Big test for him, and also putting himself ahead of all the other French contenders, guys like Pinot, Jean-Christophe Perrault, who missed out as well. As we go now through the small town of Arscott and l'Église de Notre-Dame. Oh, yeah, a little problem there at the back. It looks like there was a problem there. That looked like Rowan Dennis. A little accident. No, he's got his thumbs up. He's okay. Just one of those, as the referees, it always cracks me up when the referees announce over race radio, un chute sans gravité, a crash without any real graveness. Well, I tell you what, if any of the referees have ever fallen off, it hurts at any time you fall down. But Rowan Dennis looks okay. Thumbs up. Okay, well done. The man, let's not forget, who won the opening day and, of course, was the wearer of the yellow jersey yesterday. Rowan Dennis, he's got the yellow number on as well, because his team, with their performances so far, are the leaders of the team competition. Beautiful day to be racing through Belgium, Phil. I have to say, I think many of the riders will be quite happy that the weather is like this and not the wet and grimy conditions that they were led into yesterday.
Well, you see how green it is, and quite frankly, you don't get many days like this in Belgium. When I lived here, the first 6 weeks it rained every day, but today is idyllic. The wind is reported to be rising all day long. It could be crucial as we turn back towards the finish, but I think the hills will have a bigger say. As we now head into Bunsbeek. This is also a Dutch-speaking village now, as we head in towards the Walloon area and leave the Dutch-speaking area. And again, looks like the whole of the population has turned out. Only a small little village, this, by the way. These four guys, if you're just joining us, got away right from the gun, as they did yesterday. Different four, except one rides the same. Look, number 182, 192 there is Jan Barter. He's been in both breakaways. We're now crossing into Tielmont.
Well, we've got around about 10 kilometres of Flemish-speaking language to go through before we cross the linguistic border. And these guys over here, by the way, are making a quiet protest, because in the early part of this year, the agriculturalists, the farmers of Belgium, were making some protests about a change in the tax regime here in Belgium, which was, they felt, not making it very worthwhile to farm. And instead of actually stopping the races, as we've seen many people stop the races in the past to make protests, this time they decided to use their tractors, the tools of their trade, to make a quiet protest.
Well, I'll tell you what, they've made perfect circles there, and that is not an easy thing to do. 3 minutes, 7 seconds. Sky on the right. Sky so far will be very pleased with their Tour de France. They've got Chris Froome onto day 3. Best of all of the favourites, really. He sits in 10th place. But if you look at all his rivals, Quintana, 1 minute 39, lost to Chris Froome already. Even Alberto Contador's lost 12 seconds. So things, after 2.5 days of racing, going well for Chris. He loved the team selected to be alongside him. And yesterday, the strength of Ian Stannard and of Geraint Thomas was enormously important in keeping him in those horrible conditions right on the sharp end of the race.
As we now look at 72 kilometres ago, around about 20 kilometres now before we get to the first climb, the Côte de Boisseau. And the gap, as you see, it really has all of a sudden, without paying too much attention to the time gap, all of a sudden, yeah, it's just dropped. And that's just because of the general acceleration, the general impetus which is being lifted in the main field.
Yeah, And we saw those pictures of poor Adam Hansen. He's going through some pain back there.
Yeah, well, the doctor had warned him, Phil, it was going to be really tough for 3 or 4 days. But you know, Adam Hansen, when you bear in mind that he's riding his 12th Grand Tour in a row, he really is. He's going to fight to stay through this and stick in here. And I really take my hat off to this guy because he loves riding his bike.
Here he is, just in our picture again, number 76, Adam Hansen. At least he managed to pick up his food bag. He'll just sit round the back there. He'll come in with the last men today. That's not important. He just wants to get in, beat the time limit. Every day he hopes he'll get that little bit stronger. He's still got a week before we start the big Pyrenean mountains.
There's lots of movement at the front end of the peloton. Everybody's looking for their position and their place in this pack. And it's a question of forcing your position, holding your position. As you can see, hands coming off the handlebars a little bit. Nobody wants to allow someone else into the line. And obviously, Alberto Contador's Tinkoff Saxo team, it could be good for Peter Sagan today. Let's not forget, at the start of the day, Phil, Peter Sagan is in 4th position at 33 seconds. And I have to say that I think both you and I were extremely impressed with the way that Peter Sagan rode in the recent Amgen Tour of California, because he was climbing well and he was doing well in the individual time trials. And I've always said this about Peter Sagan, we don't really know how much he can do for himself as a professional bike rider because he's still only 24 years of age.
Well, we've just come over to the Chateau de Gey. Boy, this one is in extremely good condition. We could put a bid on this one, Paul.
Well, it's fabulous. This chateau already existed going back to 1130. It's been owned by a succession of families throughout its history, but was seriously renovated in the 15th century. The renovations undertaken by Marguerite de Faloise on behalf of her husband, Johann Holmer de Saar.
Well, I wouldn't like the job of cleaning it, but other than that, I would love to live there. That looks absolutely superb. Belgium actually has some unbelievably nice chateaus, particularly in the region of the Walloon area.
This is also an extremely part of the heritage of Wallonia. Inside there's some extremely good collections of rare furnitures and some very good gold plate work, as well as embroidery, china and tapestries, owned today by the province of Liège.
Well, we've circumnavigated it. It's on the race route today. The riders will be passing through. These 4 leaders, though, are now back to only 1:22, and it's continuing in the reversal here. Martin Elmiger is the 3rd man in line with IAM on his shoulders. He was the rider caught in sight of the finish with Jack Bauer last year. Almost won the day. Gap is closed now. It's only 27 seconds. There's the peloton and one vehicle looking after these 4 leaders. They've been away since the first kilometre of the race. And it's the big teams who are driving now on a very, very depressing, long, straight road. There's no way they can stay away now. They are beginning the battle once again on day 3 now of the Tour de France to fight for the seconds and to shuffle the leaderboard.
Yeah, they are. It really is quite. There's Lars Boom. He's the rider of 3rd position in that line of Astana riders in the turquoise jersey. Movistar with the M in the middle of their navy blue jerseys, looking after both Alejandro Valverde and the Nairo Quintana. There is Valverde. You just see him popping through there with the Spanish bands around his waist. He won that title this year. Formerly a national time trial champion as well. And of course, since the start of this race, we've always seen at the front Tinkoff Saxo. And I think I haven't seen very much of Peter Sagan, but my gut tells me, Phil, that Peter Sagan could well be looking for a move on this climb. He's actually finished in 12th place in the Flèche Wallonne in the past. He used it as a learning curve as he was trying to figure out which of the one-day classics would suit him the best. And so I think when it comes down to positioning and riding for the possibility of a yellow jersey, watch out for a good ride by Peter Sagan on today's stage.
Well, a little reversal to 31 seconds, but that usually happens when they get this close. They're not rushing at them just yet. They'll wait as they close in on the Côte de Bonisseau as we traverse another one of the beautiful chateaux of the region. Go on, give me a guess, Paul. What is it?
Well, this, I reckon, is the Chateau of Falais. It goes back to 1044, its history, and before it was transferred to the Beaufort family.
Hey, you're right.
Thank you. Well, it was a medieval castle originally, and it's been changed quite a number of times through the 14th, 16th, and 17th centuries, although its real origins go back to the 11th and 12th.
Well, it's been sold on several occasions. Let's hope they keep on renovating it because it is in beautiful condition.
Badly damaged by fire in 1937, but renovated and brought back to its former glory.
And the peloton probably aren't getting a very good view of that at the moment because it's over in the trees. But these are the 4 liders back down to 29 seconds. They just had a good look now. They're wondering what happened to the cars, but they're seeing the chief referee has decided to come back in and keep an eye on them. So they might be misleadingly taken into the fact they're pulling away, but they're not unless you call 2 seconds an advantage. Here's the peloton here. Nobody behind the race. This is the average after 2 hours today. They've averaged 40.3, just over 25 miles an hour. And the average for the whole stage, 42.7. That was the second hour and 42.7. That's a very quick time today. Just puts them slightly behind the expected time of arrival on top of the Huy, but it will get quicker now.
Yes, it will. 64 kilometres to go. The top of the next climb of the day is at 50 kilometres to go, and that is the Côte de Boisseau. And this farmhouse that we're looking at down here, by the way, is the farming castle of Beerwaard. And very much in the same structure as most of these big farms were made. This powerful square construction is surrounded by water. It was around about 1200. The manor house of Beerwaard was here, and the courtyard belonged to the Count of Namur. As the leading four, still 24 seconds, that's not really very much at all. They are in the sight of the main field. They're getting closer and closer to the lining up for the next climb, the Côte de Boisseau. Another chance to have a quick look at that fortified farm castle. There's plenty of those. In fact, there's a lot of them in the Belgian Flanders. Contador's team. Oh, little traffic island at the front, squeezing around there. Everyone will start to feel nervous. Some guys will be resigned now to just getting through this stage and will not be thinking in the back of their minds of the stage victory. When you look at the body language at the back end of the main field, you just get an indication that it has been, despite the fact that it looks easy when you're sitting at home watching this on television, there's a lot of riders already just struggling to find that acceleration to come out of the corners, to remain in contact with the peloton. A little bit further forward there, number 194, that's the new German champion, 22 years of age, Emanuel Buchmann.
And now it looks as though they're going to help Fabian Cancellara back onto his bike. What a shame this was. The AG2R rider down there looks like William Bonnet.
Well, Phil, again, this is because of the high risk of people. It sounds as if Tyler Farah was also involved in that accident.
Well, Daryl Impey there has gone onto the side road, and well, my goodness me, the rider down there from FDJ has really taken quite a knock in the face.
It's Daryl Impey there, number 104.
Well, these riders, I think we can see for ourselves, are being reported. And that, in fact, the race is announcing that they are stopping the race because of the 2 heavy crashes. So we're going to see the peloton held. Now that, it's not unprecedented, but I'm very surprised. Christian Prudhomme, there he is, has said, guys, we're stopping the race. There's 2 crashes, totally separate, and they are classed as very heavy falls. Well, that is really a great shame. Building up for a big rush at the Côte de Boisseau. And now the race is being utilised. But quite honestly, some of those riders I don't think will be continuing.
Well, it was very difficult to exactly see. It looks as if one rider crashed on his own. It was right up at the front end of the main field when we saw that accident happen. In fact, it was a touch of wheels. When you lose the front wheel like that, it's very difficult to control and recover.
The first rider to go down was definitely a rider from FDJ, and it could have been that one we've seen with the facial injuries. William Bonnet apparently is being prepared for the ambulance, and Laurens ten Dam is also down, another name we've seen. The lonely figure of the Maillot Jaune of the Tour de France just riding back up the road here now. He might or might not be aware that the race has been stopped. We're not actually stopping the race, they're calling it a neutralisation, so the riders will be brought back to a steady pace. And in fact, it looks to me as though they've released the race. So they did neutralise it, but nobody's rejoined and we're off again.
Well, they've picked the pace up very, very quickly indeed. That's the race referee. They're trying to get the car out of the way, and Team Sky, as immediately that the race was deneutralised, were right on the offensive.
The only thing I can think, Paul, because we had two crashes, both independent of one another, the referees decided to neutralise the race to bring a semblance of common sense, get them all organised again. It wasn't a case of letting those who fell get back up. It was simply bringing common sense into the race, and now we're gone again. Well, Fabien Cancellara, take a look at this. That's a Française des Jeux rider who touched the wheel and went down, and then the riders just ploughed into him one after another at such a high speed as well. That's a very, very heavy fall, and you're right, the white jersey of Tom Dumoulin was standing up on the grass. Now they're announcing again, they're stopping the race again. They're going to try and neutralise the race again. Well, that was actually a replay. That's from the first time they stopped it. But unless they're replaying the Radio Tour announcement, we are now waiting to see it neutralised for a second time.
Well, Phil, we are hearing that Tom Dumoulin, the rider who was the best young rider, has abandoned the race.
Well, that really is... They're going to stop the race at the foot of the climb of the Côte de Boisseau. Well, it's really very, very sad. They are stopping the race, and they're talking of stopping the race at the foot of the first climb. But I'm not sure the riders at the front want this to happen. Well, the initial fall was caused by a rider from FDJ touching the wheel of a rider in front, and that started a ricochet effect. And then I don't know what caused the second one. We didn't actually see it happen. Course is neutralised. Fabien Cancellara continues to ride back. Well, whatever we think about it is very sad indeed, because it was building up to one terrific showdown on these last climbs before the finish line today. And
well, the race radio is now saying they're going to stop the race at the bottom of the Côte de Boisseau, and I'm really not sure why. There's nothing in the rules to say that, but maybe because of the severity of the number of crashes.
They said it's because of two heavy falls, and there were certainly a lot of riders down, and these calls have to be made instantly, and communication of course is difficult when you're spread across an open highway like this, but there we are. And the riders are going to have a word with the race referees now, because of course the boys who didn't fall are going to feel pretty upset about this. Here comes the neutralised man who's not neutralised right now. He's just coming back up towards the pack. The race is being stopped just before we start the climb of the Côte de Boisseau.
We're also hearing that Simon Gerrans has abandoned the race, and that is very sad. Simon Gerrans crashed in the Liège-Bastogne-Liège in April, had a nasty crash at the start of the year.
Tom Dumoulin has gone, the rider who was riding so well and was placed in third overall in the classification. He's gone. William Bonnet is officially abandoned. Simon Gerrans. And everybody here now a little bit perplexed. As riders rejoin, we'll see the arrival very shortly too of Fabien Cancellara. And you can see the riders, there's officially the announcement come through now that William Bonnet has gone. That's rather sad. Now, are they moving off again? Because I don't think Cancellara's rejoined yet. Yep, they're announcing we're starting. Simon Gerrans has been announced officially now that he has abandoned the race. That's a big blow to Orica Greenedge. Here's the arrival of Cancellara as well, coming up towards the back of the race now.
Greg Henderson was involved in that crash, the rider in the red jersey, ahead of Fabian Cancellara. He's got a fair amount of his jersey missing.
Well, in fact, Cancellara's now gone off looking for his team car, which will be the #1 car in the line there. And he's discussing his situation. I don't think he feels too well, actually.
Well, let's bear in mind, Phil, this man is coming back from a very nasty accident at the start of this season, where he injured one of the vertebrae in his back.
The trouble is, this is such a sad outcome for the day. Well, they're still telling us, in fact, they are telling the team managers to ask the riders to respect the rules and do not race until all the riders involved in the crashes that are riding come back to the pack. They're saying it's because they had two very large crashes independently, and they took the immediate decision to stop the race, to allow those that can rejoin. But we know at least of 3 riders who have gone to hospital. This is the race director, Christian Prudhomme. His face gives nothing away. He used to be a sports commentator on television before he got his job as race director of the Tour de France.
Well, I don't ever, Phil, remember the race organisation actually neutralising the race because of an accident. I know the riders themselves neutralised the stage a couple of years ago when Sylvain Chavanel went on to win the stage after a massive pile-ups in the descent of the Côte de Stockeux. But to see the race organisation themselves make that call, I'd have to go back through my history books a long way. So Race Radio now saying that the decision has been made to neutralise the race to the top of the Côte de Boisseau, which is the climb that they're just starting now, and the race will be deneutralised and restarted again once they go over the top of the climb. And that will leave the riders with about 50 kilometres to go down towards the finish. That's the race organisation car right in front there, the red car. Question. And just a little bit further back there, number 202, Frédéric Brun. Thomas Voeckler, 129. He's just sitting at the back end of the race. But we have confirmation that 3 abandons, Dumoulin, Gerrans and William Bonnet of FDJ. Very, very nasty high-speed crashes as they were dropping down into the town just on the outskirts before they lined up for the Côte de Boisseau. Michael Matthews, he could have been a chance of a victory this afternoon. You can see by the way he's ripped up, he was obviously also severely involved in that very, very high-speed crash. Just having a look down there. 103. Luke Durbridge. Just looking to see if we can spot any of the other leaders of the race. I'm looking for number 1, Vincenzo Nibali. He was well positioned up to the front end of the main field. Andrei Grivko is there. This is Henderson. Just struggling to stay in contact. Bear in mind the race is still neutralised until we get over the top.
Right, In goes Christian Prudhomme, a little wave at the race. They've moved away. The race officially been restarted 50 kilometres from the finish. And we've been neutralised or stopped now for the best part of 20 minutes as the riders now prepare to cover the last 50 kilometres of the race, and they're not going to rush at this. Fabian Cancellara here looks very, very sore indeed.
A lot of riders bearing the sequels of that very nasty crash, high-speed crash, probably in excess of 35 to 45 miles an hour, because they were going slightly downhill, starting to line themselves up for what was going to be the first most important strategic point of today's stage, the Côte de Boisseau. They decided to neutralise the race up to the top of the Côte de Boisseau. There are 3 more climbs on the day, and it begs to ask the question is who's going to be the first rider to start this race again?
Well, the enthusiasm will be there just now, and we know 3 riders have retired, but I think there'll be more names by the end of this day. Daryl Impey, we must presume, has got back on his bike, but he looked very, very sore indeed. Cancellara there.
Stannard did a fantastic job yesterday, making sure that Chris Froome was looked after in the crosswinds, kept him in the right place, positioned him in the front end of that split. They have picked up the average speed quite a bit. The race is back on, although it doesn't seem to be on completely in earnest. So that's what it looks like from the skies here in Belgium. A bit of a dampener on what was lining itself up to be a pretty exciting finale down towards the finishing line. And it's always very difficult for these riders when they're in full flow like that to get stopped by the race. I've seen no races neutralised in the past because of trains coming by and incidents on the road, but never fully put into a neutralisation because of an accident like that.
Well, these 4 riders here, including Greg Henderson on the right, are clearly under pressure straight away. They've all been on the ground and they just cannot lift their pace at all here. This is poor Johan van Summeren, usually a strong workhorse for Team AG2R. Had a nasty fall on his back there. His shorts ripped as well. The pressure's gone on again. The race has restarted, so the riders have decided they're going to race this last few kilometres, and it is going to be tough. We've got, first of all, the green jersey point sprint at Havellange. Expect to see Andre Greipel try to get mixed up in that. He's wearing the green jersey today after yesterday's stage win. But the pain of Johan van Summeren, riding on his home soil here of Belgium. This is Laurens ten Dam, also had a pretty nasty fall as well.
Well, he's obviously on a different machine as well. You can see a lot of these riders have obviously pranged up their bikes quite a bit because he's got no number on his machine, so he has a spare machine from the team car. Greg Henderson also there, looking very ripped up, and you've got to really get yourself concentrated now if they're really going to take the last part of this race quite seriously.
I think they are. I think the attitude's changed again now, and it's going to put an awful lot of riders in trouble. Fabian Cancellara in the all-yellow jersey there is right at the tail end of the race. That wasn't where he was all day. And the long, thin line coming out of the pack means that they're under pressure from the pace being set at the front. Number 109, Simon Yates, caught a glimpse of. Perry Kerman in the break yesterday wants a drink.
Well, that's probably the most important thing to think about, Phil, when you're looking at sports and events at this level. That's Alejandro Valverde towards the front there, thinking about
the black colours.
This is an important day for him. Well, Alejandro Valverde in second position on the road.
Yes, and it looks as though making that move it looks like it might be the style of Rowan Dennis too, the rider who had the first yellow jersey.
Well, riders trying to recover there. That looks like Greg van Avermaet coming across the gap there with Alejandro Valverde. We are not too far away now from the sprint point at Havelange. It's around about a kilometre to go to the sprint point in Havelange, which comes at 31.5 kilometres to go.
So we are under 1 kilometre to go now as the sprint begins to regroup here, and they're trying now to get Greipel into position for that green jersey. Peter Sagan is also trying to get on the picture. Now Greipel is in third wheel here as they start to run down towards the line. Greipel is finding his sprint legs again. This could be 20 points for him. As he races up to the line, he'll have to go a little bit. It's coming close, he gets it. And he takes it right on the line there. The rider who was just with him behind there was John Degenkolb himself in second place. Nasser Bouhanni was third. Cav had to go. It looks like he might have gone over there in fifth place.
And Peter Sagan was not too far away either. You can see the gap between the two groups. It looks like it's starting to come all back together, and there will be a general slowing down for that leading group, Phil, once they've gone through the sprint point there. You can see the acceleration coming from the riders from Movistar, but coming across the gap and making the junction at the front was Alejandro Valverde. Have a look at this one more time. Andre Greipel, having won himself the stage yesterday, producing an awful lot of power with the challenge coming in the black jersey on the right-hand side from John Degenkolb.
Yeah, Degenkolb gets the second place. The first 15 riders there get points in that competition. 20 points for the man who won. I think they're now eased back a little bit. It's a short journey across to the Côte d'Eref.
Greipel getting himself maximum points, 20 points for Andre Greipel, ahead of John Degenkolb and Nasser Bouhanni, and there is confirmation, 20 points in the bag. Coquard in the fourth place, Cavendish being attentive in fifth, Peter Sagan in seventh, Roman Kreuziger up there, and Nicholas Roach inside of the 12th place. So as they start to get that little bit closer, 27 kilometers to go to the finish, and now they're taking this very, very seriously again. They're all going to try and battle for position now to get themselves as close as they can into a good position, and it looks now as if we're going to have a pretty serious race over this last probably 35 minutes of racing.
Well, there's no doubt now they've got over the crash and they're getting on with the job in hand. As a result, we've lost Tom Dumoulin, William Bonnet, Simon Gerrans with a broken wrist, and Kojuchuk of Team Katusha. 4 we know are out, but some of those riders look so badly injured they seem to be continuing, but tomorrow morning they may not be starting.
Well, that's a special thing, Phil, about the Tour de France. The most important thing, it's in the back of your mind all the time. I just got to get through today. I've got to try and get to the finish. Nobody wants to abandon the Tour de France. Even if you're severely banged up, any other race on the calendar, you would probably pull off and look for the ambulance or the car to take you to the finish. But this is the Tour de France. It's almost, I always like to compare it to an ascent of Mount Everest. You don't want to get up to the final camp before summiting, and you will do everything you can to stay in the Tour.
Well, the sad pictures we saw of the crashes, they will go round the world like wildfire, of course, as the riders now have regrouped and they're racing now. Now we've gone through Havelanga. We're going to get lots of undulations in this region, but the next official climb is the Côte d'Eref, which is 10 kilometers from the summit of that climb as we speak.
But these roads get a little bit narrower once again as we start to get closer to the Côte d'Eref. The final climb before the Mur de Huy, the Côte de Chirave, all of the riders very concerned about that because that's quite a steep little climb at 8% the average gradient. And although they only give the Mur de Huy an 11 or 12% gradient, there are some points in the corners, Phil, which I measure them in at around about 22%.
It gets very steep on the bends. In their teeth, they are pushing this pace on now as fast as they can. Bernardi and Tessato, the workhorses for Tinkoff Saxo, they really are. And never far away. Fourth in line at the moment, Alberto Contador. Such a clever rider, Contador.
Yep, and he'll be thinking about this climber. He realises, having really pulled the rabbit out of the hat yesterday with being in that leading group and getting himself a good advantage over Nairo Quintana today, could be another good move for him. He knows what the approach to the Mur de Huy is like. He knows how important it is, and he knows it's all about positioning, and what a team he's got to look after him, because not only does he have Matteo Tossata, but also Peter Sagan, and it may well be that they'll turn the tables around today, and Alberto Contador might try and get the stage victory for Peter Sagan, because in the back of my mind I've got a gut feeling that Sagan is going to get himself up this climb in a good position.
He's a strong man, and the situation has changed now. Remember, we were racing flat out to the foot of the Côte de Boniceau, and they were very nervous. It was a touch of wheels, by two riders. Started the ricochet effect. We don't know what caused the second crash. We never saw any images of the second crash. Everybody was blocked by the first crash. 22.8 kilometers to go. Saxo Tinkoff rather have now taken over the race situation here. The Chateau de Modave. Let's bring it down to another level, Paul. Tell us all about this.
Chateau de Modave, well, that is in a 450 hectare natural reserve. The Modave family owned the lands around here way back to the 13th century when there was a fortress, and one of the oldest parts of the chateau dates back to the 13th century.
Well, there is the farm alongside it there, the Castle Farm, which was also started back in the 17th century as well.
By the way, Phil, just above one of the great doors heading in there is the motto which reads "On y soit qui mal y pense," and I'm sure you've heard of that before.
I have. What do you mean?
Well, it's the Queen's motto, the motto of the royal family.
Yeah. Well, they've got back into the action now, and I must say they pulled themselves round, because the big riders, the big teams in this race, have seen an advantage now to try and race towards the top of the Fouille, snatch those 10-second bonus for the first man over the line. There's 6 and 4 for the next two. It can alter the overall. Chris Froome's Sky team right in the centre, easy to pick out in those black jerseys and blue racing helmets. This is the man suffering most, the race leader, Cancellara.
And you can see the speed here, really, because the main field stretched out into this very long line. Now, Cancellara is a tough old character, I have to say, and he will do everything he can to try and survive on a day like this, because he will do as much honour as he can to that yellow tunic. He knows how important it is for his team, but it's also important for himself, just not to let that tunic slip away from his shoulders. All he has to do is try and stay in contact with the main field. There are time bonuses available. Once again, 10, 6 and 4 for the first 3 riders to cross the line. Peter Sagan has a little bit of a buffer, a little bit of time to make up. He's looking for 33 seconds on Fabian Cancellara if he wants to take the overall lead, and he's in 4th place at the start of today's stage.
We're looking at the peloton. Drive, drive, drive is the motto of the day now, and there's no slowing this race down. We're pushing up to 60 kilometers an hour, Paul.
Yeah, well, different coloured jerseys coming to the front now. That lime green jersey of Cannondale Garmin, that is the team of Dan Martin. Dan Martin is quite an expert at these hilltop finishes, and he will be looking to position himself nicely before the next climb of the day, because I think the important part of this next few kilometres, as we go under 20 kilometres to go, it's all about positioning.
20 kilometres to go now. Well, there's no doubt that Alberto Contador, they've been counting themselves the luckiest team. They had no fallers in that crash. I don't think Cannondale Garmin did either, but this is a shame. The speed has really cracked Fabian Cancellara. He's injured again, the yellow jersey. He goes under 20 kilometres, losing time now. He'll be losing at the yellow jersey tonight, and really we have to say, to no fault of lack of strength, poor old Fabian Cancellara in trouble as he freewheels to the right. On the Côte d'Aref now, Paul, this is the riders themselves said it may only be a 4th category, but it is hard.
Very hard indeed, and the top of it is at 10 miles to go, 16.5 kilometres. I think they're more concerned about the final climb before the Mur de Huy, the Côte de Chirac, but as you can see how narrow these roads are, it's so important to be well placed. Luke Durbridge is sitting in the middle there for Orica Green Edge. Michael Kwiatkowski is the rider, the world champion, and further down the road, sad to see the shoulders of Fabian Cancellara bow down in the agony which he must be going through just to try and stay in the race here.
Yes, he looks like Mark Renshaw just in front of him too, and he had a flat tyre when the split came, so he's been relegated as well now. Chris Froome just passing through our picture in the black right at the front there, looking pretty cool, calm and collected. There's Quintana on the far side, he's still in this group. Peter Sagan with the red across his jersey there. Now we are hearing, I don't know whether you could hear that, but I heard somebody from the motorbike shout attack on the left. And the green jersey is going off here, and there's the attack that's just come.
Well, at the back end of the race, there is a rider, Andre Greipel, is being left behind. Now, all of a sudden, There's a little move. Now, this is a very important move to go clear on the Côte de l'Eref, because there's at 1 point available for the first rider to go over the top of this climb. A lot of guys there. Mark Cavendish going backwards there on the left-hand side, just looking at the damage being done at the back end of the main field. 124 slipping away, Johan Genet of Europcar. Cavendish, 4th on the race yesterday. Fabian Cancellara. Very, very difficult day for Cancellara now. Well, Angelo Tulik, the French rider from Europcar, is in the lead. We're looking at the front end of the main field here at 17 kilometers to go. There is one rider in front of the peloton at around about 15 seconds, and that is the Europcar rider, Angelo Tulik. But we can see all the main contenders. There's JC, Jean-Christophe Perrault in the AG2R jersey there in the brownish shorts, and this is the lone leader. Now, once he gets over the top of this climb, he's got a very good chance of getting himself the single point. There are 2 points available. There's 1 point available over the next climb of the day, the Côte de Chérab, and 2 points available over the top of the Mur de Huy. That's a 3rd category climb up towards the top, and it was Team Sky trying to take the responsibility of the chasing. There's a chance there to see, of course, the beautiful Belgian blue cows over to the right-hand side. This is pretty much the home of the Belgian blue, and this is Team Sky. Geraint Thomas over on the left-hand side. Chris Froome up into 3rd position. Alberto Contador got all of his teammates around him. That's Geraint Thomas, and now slipping away here, number 144, and that is Stijn de Volder. He's riding this Tour de France for the first time in more than 5 years. Looking to see who else has been caught out here. Number 81, John Degenkolb. Degenkolb, watch out for him once the race gets a little bit further down, because he's one of the top sprinters in the Tour de France this year, but he's a man who can survive over the top of the climb. The yellow jersey is 1.5 minutes behind as we go over the top of the Côte d'Eref. But Froome over on the right-hand side's got plenty of teammates up alongside him. TJ Van Garderen in there as well for the BMC squad, and still keeping himself up at the front. The red and white jerseys looking after the rider from Katusha. That is Rodriguez. He's got the bandage on his elbow, just to the left. And Nasser Bouhanni, the big sprinter, he's also nursing injuries from an accident that he had in the French National Championships just 1 week before the start of the Tour de France, crashing inside of the last 200 or 300 meters. It's TJ Van Garderen in the middle with the white sunglasses. Peter Kenyon comes forward now in the white jersey over the top of the climb. We're now dropping down into the small town of Marchand. Well, 143. Fabian Cancellara and Andre Greipel. Greipel just having a look across to see what the situation is there. And Fabian Cancellara, I'm sure he would have done a lot better than this if he hadn't had that accident.
Oh, Cancellara, his hand on his hip there. He knows now he's just got to pedal his last 14 kilometres. The yellow jersey will be going elsewhere tonight. Michael Shaw here was the first man over the top. I didn't think he looked like Michael Shaw to me.
No, I think there's a little mistake there, because as far as I'm concerned, it was the Europcar rider went over the top. So let's ignore the graphic on this occasion.
So it was Angelo
Tulik.
Tulik, yeah.
Yeah. Fabian Cancellara, though, Phil, is trying to find as much of his courage as he can muster, and I just wonder, Phil, whether he can drag his body up the Mur de Huy, which is the climb that comes up towards the end of today's stage, because it's a beast of a climb. I mean, you are looking at around about 22% in some of the corners. You have a hard time actually walking up this climb.
Yeah, this is the top of the Côte d'Eref here by the back markers, who have now given up their racing for the day. A lot of the sprinters are in this group, including Nasser Bouhanni, Andre Greipel, Mark Cavendish, as they go over the top. At their 2 minutes 22 behind at that point now, as we speed on here with the Group Maillot Jaune behind by 2:22, Sky are now taking very close reference to the front of the race because they've got Chris Froome right there.
Yes, everybody now taking a serious amount of concern of placing their riders close to the front. Vincenzo Nibali is never far away. You can see his teammates in the turquoise jerseys. Also, Jean-Christophe Perrault, JC Perrault, they call him, from AG2R. He is at the front end of the main field. All of the riders who got caught out yesterday maybe being just a little bit more attentive here this afternoon.
TJ Van Garderen, the third man in the line of yellow crash helmets with the red jersey. He's got his team up here as well. He's best placed overnight of all of the pre-favourites of the Tour de France. But this group will thin out more dramatically on the next climb of the Charave because it's far tougher than the Côte d'Aref.
Steve Cummings on the right-hand side, slipping back there, wearing number 63, and that in fact is Rowan Dennis, the erstwhile leader of this race, having won the opening individual time trial. Seems like a long time ago, Utrecht.
Oh, look at the effort here being put on by Richie Porte now, the wingman of Chris Froome. This is Marcel Seberg coming through to the camera. Well, there's no doubt the race has been marred by that crash today, but the riders now are really turning on the style. It has to be said that the same strong men we expected are now pockling to the top of the water pot here. Still Richie Porte here, followed by Geraint Thomas, and then behind them both is Chris Froome. Chris is so pleased with his team. They're guiding him, they're keeping him safe into this third day of the Tour de France. They're trying to deliver him now to see if he can win the day for them.
Well, pretty strange, Phil, because although it appeared as if the Frenchman from Europe car was going to go over the top of the climb in first place, so we're getting confirmation that it was Michael Schär. A little bit of confusion on the roads this afternoon because of all the excitement that's going on, but one thing is absolutely certain: the run in towards the finish is very, very tricky and precarious. We all know what the final climb is like, the final kilometre. It's very steep indeed, but inside of the last 8 or 9 kilometres there are a lot of very, very tight bends, so you've got to really hold your position at the front end of this pack.
Well, that's a sharp one to say the least now, as the riders just try to hang on to the very speed and the wheel in front as they go around that right-hander. And you could see close up there, they even had to ride across that cobbled peninsula that was sticking out as they made that right turn. This is a little bit of a downhill as they are flying downhill. Well, Jens Voigt is part of our commentary team. Jens, you're probably living every pedal stroke with these riders right now. What do you think's going to happen now?
I do feel for them. It's a stressful day and it's a very hard day with a lot of unexpected crashes. We have another obstacle coming before actually the last climb. That second last climb is a fourth category and it's only 1.3 kilometers long, but it's 8% gradient. It's 8% steep. So that's a vicious little climb, and they all are going to get ready to tackle this second last climb in the best possible position, because basically the decision who's able to win is going to be made already there.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. The riders are afraid of this next springboard here, and that's why they've been racing so hard to try and see it first. And at the moment, Richie Porte is doing an outstanding job for Team Sky here, because once they hit that climb, I think this big group will split.
Yeah, Jensi, the thing is about these little climbs towards the end, which is very much like a mini Flèche Wallonne. It's not necessarily the climb that's precarious, it's also the little rundown away from them, because they're narrow roads with very sharp hairpin bends.
Rides a different approach to the climb to the finish in Huy. Michael Rogers in second place here, the strong man on Contador's team. The white sunglasses down the pack there, worn by Geraint Thomas. Quintana has moved up towards the front as well. He's looking for it too.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Phil. Fabian Cancellara is no longer in this group. We will have a brand new yellow jersey at the end of the day. If you look at the riders, yellow jersey 4.5 minutes behind. Alberto Contador will be looking at the victory. Tony Martin, in fact, is moving up onto the tail of Michael Kwiatkowski. Now, I wonder if the world champion is going to turn it around. Michael Kwiatkowski could be trying to set something up for Tony Martin, who starts the day in second position overall, and Peter Sagan, of course, is fourth. He's looking, though, for 33 seconds.
Geraint Thomas looks over his shoulder here. He's looking, said, where's this Chris Froome? Got to keep an eye on Chris Froome. That's Chris Froome now come through. He's indicated Chris to move up now because the others are moving up. And Froome, he's got it on. He's gone right onto the wheel of the world champion. That's a good move, I would suggest. Michael Rogers is the man in the front of the group here now. He's doing it for Alberto Contador. This is a hill that we don't know. We've not seen this hill. Only those that came to have a look have. Rogers grits his teeth. Kwiatkowski, Froome.
Looks like Rafael Majka, who's come to the front there, in fact, who's doing the pacemaking there for Tinkoff Saxo. A lot of damage being done at the back, as we can see there. It looks to me as well as if Mikkel Kwiatkowski, the world champion today, may well be trying to do something very special and turn the books around for Tony Martin. Martin, if he can survive on a climb like this, he's got a good buffer over everybody else.
Yeah, right, it is Rafael Michael here. Once he gets back down, much smaller figure as he grits his teeth. The king of the mountains in the Tour de France last year. We just saw Matthias Frank of I Am Cycling tail off the back here. Kwiatkowski is sitting there and waiting, and this rider also being dropped at the moment. That's Frank as he goes. The whole world has imploded now as the riders one by one have found this a little climb too far.
Peric Federico going backwards. He is a former 4-time stage winner of the Tour de France, finding this one just a little bit too difficult this afternoon. Damage is being done, and this is not the final climb of the day. There's another climb to go after this one. It's 8% the gradient here. They'll drop down very quickly, go along the River Meuse or the Maas, depending on which language you want to speak, and then they will start to head downtown into the town of Huy, and then they'll turn right and start to line themselves up.
Rui Costa, the former world champion, people were naming him to win today, being dropped here on this penultimate climb. Quintana here now as Geraint Thomas tries to grab his wheel.
Well, in fact, Rui Costa, Phil, was involved in that accident. The race, his race car put out a tweet to say that he was injured on his left-hand hip, so he's having a hard time surviving on a day like this. Rafael Majka, though, is the man stamping out the authority. In about 7th or 8th position, just behind Nairo Quintana, is that bobbing figure of Alberto Contador.
Yeah, we did see Costa sat on the ground in that first crash. As we come up and over the top here, there's only 1 point and only one rider gets it at the top. Might have been Majka who got the 1 point. That's not what he's looking for. His pacemaking is really here. Boysenhagen at the back of this group.
So this is going to be a very group. Thibaut Pinot there, number 21, is losing a little bit of time on this short, violent climb. He's got a teammate up alongside him. He's around about 20 seconds off.
Boysenhagen trying to stay in this race now because we have a very, very small group at the front now. All the damage done by Majka. And they're saying that Costa's now dropped 28 seconds on that climb. It'll be tough to bridge it. Look at the gap against the yellow jersey. He's now going to be over 5 minutes back before he comes to the top. 5 kilometers to go.
And the big names are all there. Alberto Contador, Chris Froome, Vincenzo Nibali, Nairo Quintana. They're all keeping a very close eye on each other. They don't want to lose any time, the guys who lost time yesterday, as they did on the stage over the roads towards Zeeland. But this is obviously a very serious move by Alberto Contador and Tinkoff Saxo. There's Chris Froome up into 4th position. TJ Van Garderen is there as well in the yellow helmet of BMC Racing.
Well, they gave that, in fact, not to Majka, but to Arredondo in his first Tour de France. He got the single point there. So there's 2 joint leaders. It's whoever wins the race. There's 2 points for that. Then we're going to have 3 joint leaders. But whoever wins the race will lead the King of the Mountains today. That seems to be the way it's going to be now.
Well, there's 4 minutes, and it's going to take them about 3 minutes to get to the bottom of the final climb. Then it's going to take them 3 minutes to get up the final kilometre, because it's a nasty uphill finish here to the Mur de Huy.
Well, that's a wide run, and straight off the road he goes. He didn't even try to make that corner.
Well, he was
wise
locked
call.
up.
He saw his exit and took it.
Well, he was locked up with his back wheel, and he was not going to correct that move going around the corner.
Well, he looks as though he may have found a soft landing here, as we saw that. As we're looking here now at Roman Kreuziger here, trying to get back into the race.
Well, Froome is up into second position. Geraint Thomas working like a Trojan on the front here. You can see the Union flag on his sleeve there, former national champion. Geraint Thomas is in 5th place overall at the start of today's stage. Iridescent yellow sunglasses for Alberto Contador. They're all being very, very attentive and not too far back. Joaquim Rodriguez, this morning he was playing down his chances, saying he felt a little bit too injured after his accident of yesterday. And also right in there, Vincenzo Nibali. There he is, wearing number 1. Kwiatkowski, he's talking on the radio.
Well, these are the survivors, and we're now 3 kilometres to go to the finish here. Nobody's going to slow down now. Geraint Thomas is talking with the team Movistar. This is the team that's leading Quintana to the base of the Huy as well. Don't know if... yes, Valverde is there too, the man that has won the classic race Flèche Wallonne on 3 occasions. This is Thibaut Pinot, and he's looking for 11 seconds.
Got his teammate Steve Morabito, the Swiss rider who moved across to FDJ during the winter months, looking after him. He's not too far back at 11-12 seconds. He's keeping a very close eye on that yellow car, the neutral service car in front of him. That's where he wants to get to. He wants to make sure he doesn't lose too much time on a stage like this. Underneath the railway bridge, this is the Quai de Namur. Very shortly they will see the bridge in front of them. That's where they will take a right-hand turn into the heart of Huy before then starting to line up, and then shortly they will see the Flamme Rouge. 2 kilometres to go.
Massive charge, under 2 kilometres to go now. Now, can Chris Froome, he's going to go shoulder to shoulder here, I think, with Quintana, Valverde, Contador. The Mer de Huy is going to be a battle royale of men who are looking to win the Tour de France, which is still almost 3 weeks away.
Well, looks like Micah has recovered to get himself right to the front. Ahead there, just behind him, is Geraint Thomas, Alberto Contador, all of the big names. Very shortly they will start to line up. They will see the Flamme Rouge.
That looked to me as though it was Wilco Keldermans there who's trying to go clear here, and he's onto the climb as he looks over his shoulder.
Bob Jungels,
Luxembourg champion.
Brilliant move by Bob Jungels, 22 years of age, as they start to line up. Chris Froome scuttling up the outside on the left-hand side there. Rodriguez is not far off. He's trying to get himself onto the wheel of Geraint Thomas.
1 kilometre to go. Jungels has gambled and going early in his first Tour de France. It looks as though Kwiatkowski, the world champion in the white jersey, is falling out of it now, as Rodriguez is going to try and take over the control here.
Well, it's all about holding on to your position now, and Team Katusha have come forward to try and keep this pace nice and high. Kwiatkowski, the world champion, number 111, has found it a little bit difficult this afternoon. Maybe he did too much work on yesterday's stage. Sitting right on the wheel of Chris Froome is the bobbing figure of Alberto Contador. Behind Alberto Contador is Peter Sagan.
Well, Sagan is absolutely amazing if he can hold this one off, but now Chris Froome is in a perfect position here as they try to slog it out to the finish. It is going to be desperate moments, but Froome tucking in on the black there. This is a teammate of Joaquim Rodriguez who's trying to break into the picture, but watch now for Froome. Contador is on Froome's wheel. They are waiting because we have the steepest part of this climb is just as they move around the left-hand corner.
That is Rodriguez, a little shake of the head. He's the rider with the bandage on his elbow. TJ Van Garderen is the rider from BMC in the yellow helmet, moving up towards the front there. Chris Froome is trying to stay very close to the front. He keeps looking over his shoulders. These riders have to understand and remember, if you look at the average speed, we're looking at around about 20 kilometers an hour, 12 miles an hour. Van Garderen is over on the right-hand side. Froome is now starting to wind it up, but it's 450 meters to go, and Contador is locked on his wheel.
There's the steepest section of the course, and he kicks again, and Contador's trying to match him. Rodriguez is up there as well. And look at the face of Alberto Contador. Froome is going to try to ride them off the wheel here. Rodriguez is right in there. He's the rider on the right of our picture. And as Rodriguez tries to break to the right now, he may have that little extra impetus because Froome may have tried to make his move a little bit too early. Greg Van Avermaet, who is trying the move there now, as it's Tony Galopin, who was off with a puncture, who has moved up here into second wheel. So it's Rodriguez, Galopin, Froome trying to make it up towards the finishing line. It's approaching.
And into fourth position, TJ Van Garderen is right up there. This is Pierre Rolland at the back, but Joaquim Rodriguez certainly knows this climb extremely well as he comes around the final corner, looking for the last catch of a sight of that line. Well, and Froome's coming back.
Froome battles on. He's best of the favourites right now. Rodriguez, though, who has won the Flèche Wallonne once, finished second in it twice, is now going to try and champion the win on top of the Huy for the Tour de France. Dan Martin has also made a move in that lime green jersey. How long can Rodriguez hold this, and can Chris Froome open it up? He's got it. Rodriguez gets the win. Froome gets second place and more bonus time, and that is a tremendous ride by him. Dan Martin crosses in fourth. TJ will be in sixth, Nibali in seventh, and one of the Yateses are over there in eighth.
Upside inside of the top 10 as well. There is Alberto Contador. Looks like he's lost a couple of seconds there because Alejandro Valverde was ahead of him. Robert.
Well, the early move may have cost Chris Froome the win, but judging by the time gaps, he's actually gained some more time.
Psychological battle. They're looking.
Well, that was such a vicious battle as they came up the hill here at the end of this. It's even a harder climb than when they come to the end of the Flèche Wallonne, which is a race of 200 kilometres. And still on the climb there, number 21, who finished third in the Tour de France last year. That is Thibaut Pinot. He's losing quite a bit of time here at the moment. So Froome is right up there now. I'm just going to have a try. Well, Paul Sherman, you can probably try and work out who's doing what here, Paul, now. But Peter Sagan lost about 30 seconds. Might be Peter Sagan who's going to come up here, although I think Chris Froome may have got better time on him. It's going to be a big calculation now to see who is the next leader.
Froome will have picked up a 6-second time bonus for second position there. He started the day 4 seconds behind TJ Van Garderen. There will be a little bit of a gap between the two of them, so it's going to be very close on the countback. But it looks very much as if it's going to be Chris Froome, who was pretty much right the way up there, I have to say.
He could be in yellow tonight.
So as we look down here on the citadel, the fortress just above the Mur de Huy, what a dramatic finish that has turned out to be. No doubt at all about this big acceleration coming from Joaquim Rodriguez. Played down his chances this morning. He gets the win just ahead of Froome. Froome will pick up a 6-second time bonus, but it's all about the gaps behind now as we start to do the addition of points. Just goes to show that Chris Froome really was keeping a very close eye on this one here this afternoon.
Joaquim Rodriguez, the man who yesterday was struggling and losing big time. They call him Purito, the little cigar, has now won this stage of the Tour de France. A terrific performance for him and a real turn up for the buck, but inspired by a finish he knew. There's Tony Martin down there, started the day in second place and still out on the road with injuries due to that crash. The yellow jersey, Fabian Cancellara. No longer ambitions now of leading this tour. All gone in one crash.
Well, very sad day for Fabian Cancellara, and what a dramatic day it was on the roads of the Tour de France. Tomorrow could be a very similar scenario as we start to head out towards the finish. And we're getting confirmation, Phil, there that with that time bonus, it looks as if Chris Froome will be leading this race by a single second from Tony Martin, with TJ Van Garderen up into third place.
Well, I didn't even see Tony Martin in the melee there, but we'll wait to see if that is confirmed. And that is just the way this tour has gone. The team has been absolutely brilliant looking after Chris Froome, and now on the day when he had to, he has delivered the goods. And the yellow jersey could be his, but it's a long way to the finish.
Very long way to go. Let's not forget we've only got one Sunday under the belt. There's 3 more Sundays to go before we get to the finish and Champs-Élysées. But big time gaps here at the top of the Mur de Huy. Everybody now will start to cast their minds forward to the next stage. Here's confirmation of the stage.
Well, Froome given the same time, and then there are timed gaps to everybody else. A real Le Mans up for AG2R, third for the Frenchman, Dan Martin, Galopin, Van Garderen, Nibali, Sean Yates, Quintana, and Bauke Mollema, who was right up there till just before the finish when he cracked. He lost 11 seconds, and Contador not there, so he could be considered to have lost even more. And Froome gaining all that time. It seems, we'll wait for confirmation, but it looks as though he's in the Maillot Jaune. All of the enthusiasm knocked out of the group Maillot Jaune, who are now many minutes behind. There's the victory margin, second ever stage victory for Joaquim Rodriguez. He won in Mond in 2010. We're heading back there later. He'll be a marked man when we go down there. But meanwhile, on the Huy itself, they still continue to climb up, and the crowd know what's happened, you know, as they look to point out the Maillot Jaune of Fabien Cancellara. You see them shouting directly at him.
Big question mark is, Phil, when most of these riders get to the finishing line and get evacuated to the local hospitals. Most of them will be heading down to the hospitals down towards Liège. What the situation will be, and will they be able to start tomorrow, having had the x-rays and scans?
Well, Daryl Impey looked very, very hurt, and he's actually ridden. He's in this group at the moment, still going up the hill. Here it is, the overall, and Chris Froome is back in yellow by a single second, and TJ Van Garderen will move into third place, Tony Galopin into fourth, Van Avermaet up into fifth, and the amazing Peter Sagan on a day like this is sixth overall now, 31 seconds back.
There's Thomas de Gendt sitting in the middle. Look at the time gaps, though, as we can see, 10.5 minutes has gone by. Luke Durbridge in the middle in the white jersey of Orica Green Edge. Huge time gaps on today, and we can expect another very, very exciting day tomorrow, because tomorrow the riders finally head back down towards France as they move away from one of the small towns in the outskirts of Liège, the town of Serrin, for a long stage, a stage of 223 kilometers on their way down to Cambrai. But I think, Phil, maybe more importantly, are the 7 sections of cobblestones out on the course.
As Rodriguez took the stage, it was Chris Froome in second position, and he has ascended to the overall race lead. He has a 1 second buffer on Tony Martin, 13 seconds to TJ Van Garderen. It's then Galopin, Van Avermaet, Sagan, Rigoberto Urán, Contador in 8th place at 36 seconds behind. Nibali is at 1:38, Quintana a minute and 56 seconds. The green jersey, that belongs to Andre Greipel, for now at least. Peter Sagan is in second spot there. King of the Mountains classification is being led by Joaquim Rodriguez, ahead of Rafael Majka, the man who won that classification a year ago. White jersey for the best young rider, it's Peter Sagan with a 36-second buffer over the Frenchman, Warren Barguil. A look back at the start of today's stage, the longest stage of this year's race at some 223.5 kilometres. Breakaway getting established very early on, and it was courtesy of the Belgian Thomas de Gendt. De Gendt with Lotto Soudal in the red colours. He led over the top of the one and only climb on today's stage. Category 4 climb coming quite early after just 53 kilometres having been covered. So he collects 1 point in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. It will still be Joaquim Rodriguez who leads that classification once they eventually arrive at the finish line. The cannons going off, and there'll be cannons once they reach the pavé. The first sector of pavé comes in 18 kilometres. It's at the 120 kilometre mark, so they're not too far away from getting there. This is the composition of the breakaway. Thomas de Gendt in red, we've already mentioned. He's collected 1 point the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. A winner of a stage at the Giro d'Italia. He's also been third overall in that race, but he's a long way down here. He sits at 16 minutes and 31 seconds down. This is Preet Cumier from the Europcar team. He's the best placed overall from this quartet at 10 minutes and 42 seconds. This is the most intriguing move, though. Louis Vestre for Astana in the break to support Vincenzo Nibali. The exact same strategy that was employed by the Astana squad on the corresponding stage 1 year ago. And rounding out the breakaway for a Breton Séché, it is Frédéric Brun in his first ever Grand Tour. And he gets to make his debut at the Tour de France. Main peloton at 4 minutes and 40 seconds behind. Worth noting the two teams at the front setting the tempo at this point. Most notably, it's the Giant Alpecin squad, the teammates of the man who won Paris-Roubaix this year, John Degenkolb. Greipel, the leader of the points classification, collecting that green jersey after his stage win on stage 2 for the first time in his career. 7 stage wins now for him at the Tour de France. Mark Cavendish was a frustrated 4th place on that stage. And as a result of that 4th place finish, we've seen a little bit of frustration coming out of the edX Quick-Step team. Cavendish was critical of his lead-out man, Mark Renshaw, and the team manager, Patrick Lefebvre, was critical of Mark Cavendish. The man caught in the middle of it all has been Tony Martin, who's missed out on wearing the yellow jersey. He sits in 2nd place today at just 1 second behind. Cumier at the back, 1:26 from Europcar. His 2nd attempt in a breakaway throughout this year's tour. 191 riders taking to the start line today. Fabian Cancellara, a non-starter. He did finish yesterday. Daryl Impey and also Simon Gerrans for Orica Green Edge. They're already on their way home. This is Michael Matthews sitting uncomfortably at the back. He's got the Dutchman Peter Winning with him. The big Dutchman has been given the instructions to stay with Michael Matthews all day long. And Michael Matthews has declared his simple objective is to get to the finish line inside the time delay, to not be eliminated. Thibaut Pinot, the man who finished in 3rd place overall last year, he is openly pessimistic about his prospects today. He struggled yesterday, simply didn't have the legs. They were his words. And the cobblestones are not the place to try and recover. This is Tony Galopin. Many expecting that he could be the rider in yellow at the conclusion of today's stage. The Frenchman wore yellow for a day last year. He sits in 4th position overall, and he's at 26 seconds behind Chris Froome. He was very good yesterday, Tony Galopin, finishing in 5th position, 8 seconds behind Rodriguez. Giant Alpecin at the front, doing the chasing, full of confidence for John Degenkolb. It's rather strange this year seeing Giant Alpecin without Marcel Kittel. Shows the strength of the team that with Kittel slightly off form, they decided not to select him. Average speed of the stage so far, 38.9 kilometres per hour. And this is very much the calm before the storm as they approach the first paved section. And for the South Africans, Louis Mainkies made an interesting post on social media last night. He said, the worst thing about riding the Tour is I won't be able to watch the Tour on TV. Well, Louis is right in the thick of the action. I expect to see the former South African national champion, Louis Mainkies, come to the fore once we get down to the Pyrenees and maybe into the Alps, or perhaps in a breakaway in that transitional stages in the middle as we go through the massive Centrale. Richie Porte, Louis Koning, the two riders sitting at the front for Team Sky. Porte, it's been a frustrating season for him that started so well. Frustrating in the sense that his big objective for the year was the Giro d'Italia. Unfortunately, he crashed out, abandoned the race. But his teammate sitting directly behind him, Louis Koning, well, he took up the reins for Team Sky and he performed very well. A top 10 finish at the Giro this year for Louis Koning in 6th position. And what that means for Chris Froome is that for Chris Froome, amongst his teammates, he's got 3 riders, Roach, Porte and Koning, who have all finished themselves in the top 10 of a Grand Tour. Plus, he's got the likes of Thomas and Stannard and Rowe when it comes to stages like this one. Normally, you don't see Richie Porte come to the front until the back end of the stage to protect Chris Froome in the mountains. But today it's Port who's doing the work early, because Ian Stannard, Geraint Thomas and also Luke Rowe, specialists for the flatlands and the cobblestones, they're the ones that they'll be saving to support Chris Froome in the final 50 kilometres or so, when we've got 6 paved sectors all squashed in together. Momentarily just spotted Greg Henderson down towards the back. Number 77 in the red colours of Lotto Soudal. Unfortunately for Henderson, he crashed out of the Tour with a nasty knee injury last year on a wet roundabout. Yesterday involved in that horrific crash. And that was just a little prelude, not the actual paved sector. 9 kilometres before they get there. And already you can see the tempo starting to amp up. So with Richie Port on the front, we approach the first paved sector. 129 kilometres to go. Let's head across to Phil and Paul.
Thank you very much indeed, Matt. As we're now looking at the peloton, and it's Sky taking control, and it looks as though we've got Richie Port of Australia. Big rumours he'll be leaving this Team Sky at the end of the year and moving across to Team BMC. He wants to win the races for himself, but on this occasion he's riding for the new leader of the Tour de France now, and that is Chris Froome, trying to guide him through what Chris will see as a most difficult day for him.
Well, I think what's more importantly, Phil, is the weather for the moment out on the course is dry. Looking up towards the skies here, it's still very sunny at the finishing line in Cambrai, but these riders do not want to have a damp and dismal attack of the cobblestones as they did last year. And let's not forget, last year Chris Froome did not actually crash on the cobblestone section. He crashed before they actually reached the cobblestones. That's Richie Port there, really turning up the pace. We've got 2 lines of teams here trying to get themselves organised. Chris Froome looked after by Team Sky, and there right alongside him in the Italian national jersey is Vincenzo Nibali.
Well, the leader's already on cobblestones, but they're not the first official. It's just the way they make the stones in the town they're going through. But you can feel the nervousness again here, and this is why we had the fall yesterday. They were racing for the first small climb onto narrow roads, and the mistake came by 2 riders on the long straight at something like 60 kilometres an hour, long way before the actual climbs themselves.
Yeah, Movistar coming up through the middle. You see how everybody is really taking all kinds of risks to be towards the front of the main field. The other thing they realise as well is if there is an accident on the cobblestone section, you can get delayed because the roads are so narrow, the road gets blocked up, and it takes an awful long time to get round any accident and then to catch back up with the main field. That's the leading group of 4 riders. They built themselves at a maximum of one stage in excess of 8.5 minutes, but it's coming down pretty rapidly now.
Yeah, in fact, it went over 9 minutes, but it's come down to 2:44 just now. These are the 4 leaders. Number 73 there, just taking some food out of his pocket, Thomas de Kent. He got the 1 point, and the only 1 point for the top of the Namur Citadel climb. It's the only climb of the day. Having a little look at the Le Chateau de Senef. And another beautiful piece of buildings here as we now are entering French soil. Well, the wind is slightly favourable just at the moment as well, but there's a lot of riders actually want the front of the race here. Join us as always in commentary is the 17-time rider of the Tour, Jens Voigt. Jens, the pace is on. I don't even see the pictures we can see, but already riders being left behind here.
Yeah, I could see the pictures, I could see the images. I think Team Sky is just playing it safe. Sometimes, or very often, the offense is the best defense. So they don't want to get caught on the wrong end of the paint. So they thought, okay, we're going to dish out some pain. We're going to cause some stress.
Well, that's exactly. We've just seen Rafael Majka go out to the back of the race here at the moment. I mean, it may have a problem, but there's a group. The race is splitting here as we race towards this sector number 1 of the cobblestones. And we're only 5 kilometres from them.
Yes, and strangely enough, this section of cobblestones, 1.8 kilometres long, is 120 kilometres to go to the finish, and then they've got a big gap, really, so they can reorganise themselves. But everybody wants to get into this first section of cobblestones in a good position before they then regroup afterwards. And Team Sky currently, obviously, have really done a good job in getting themselves organised, but now all of a sudden you can see their black and red jerseys. Now, that's a bit of a surprise for me to see number 71 so close to the back there, Tony Galopin. He rode very well yesterday. He's well up in the overall standings, and to see Tony Galopin getting himself caught out there is a little bit of a shock. Number 38, that's Ian Stannard, Team Sky. He's a man who's a specialist at these one-day cobble races in the early part of the season. He too seems to be a little bit caught out. Now, this is because we're getting, once again, the wind coming in off the North Sea. It's a slightly crosswind here, and that's why we're seeing the main field start to split up as we are. The first section of cobblestones that the riders go through is the section from Pont-à-Celle to Guilly-les-Piétons, and they're 1,800 metres long. They're fairly good cobbles. These are not really the nasty cobbles of Paris-Roubaix, and in fact when we get to a couple of sections later on, sections 3 and 4 to go, they're in fact slightly uphill, the opposite direction to Paris-Roubaix, so they'll go over them just a little bit slower than they do in the one-day classic, which takes place in April, known to many people as the Queen of the Classics, to others as the Hell of the North. Now just going through the small town of Liberchy. Liberchy is at 123 kilometres to go, and you can see that acceleration, the wind again is going to have a very serious effect on the main field, and that's why we've seen the number of riders being shelled off the back. I was very surprised there, Phil, to see Tony Galopin left behind.
Absolutely. People are talking about him accelerating into the yellow jersey of Chris Froome, but right now Chris Froome is right up there with his team at the front. And remember, today Chris Froome becomes the most garlanded rider in that yellow jersey in the history of British cycling, as he wears 15th day in yellow throughout his Tour career. A big moment for Chris, looking very, very solid, and this will be the one stage of his life where he could be fragile, and he knows it.
Well, I know the thing is, Phil, Chris Froome does not look all that comfortable on a bike, but I have to go back to when he first started racing a bike as a youngster. He actually started riding mountain bikes, so when you ride mountain bikes, you do learn quite a lot about bike handling. I think his handling ability has changed over the years as he's refined his position to get more power out, but certainly I don't think he'd be afraid of the cobblestones, and especially with the fact that he did ride Paris-Roubaix, the one-day classic, way back in 2008.
Well, the wind at the moment is coming from the right-hand side. That's what's happened, and it's got in amongst the back of the field there. Some of the riders, of course, still very much pained. Laurens ten Dam, who had to relocate his dislocated shoulder on the roadside before finishing the race yesterday, is just about hanging on at the back, and he must be in terrible pain.
Funny little story there as well, actually, about Laurens ten Dam, because he was initially announced over race radio of having abandoned, and in fact he had started to climb into the car, and when he heard that the race was neutralised, he said to the team mechanic, "Pop back my shoulder," and he popped his shoulder back in there, the dislocation, and he got back onto his bike and dragged himself through towards the end of the stage. That, Phil, to me, really is the reference of a tough character.
It's the Tour de France, it breeds them tough. As we look at Peter Weening there, former stage winner on the Orica Green Edge, they got hit hard yesterday, the Aussie setup, losing two riders, Daryl Impey and Simon Gerrans. Daryl Impey actually finishing with a broken collarbone, but of course couldn't start this morning.
This is Thomas de Gent on the front, finished third overall in the Giro d'Italia a couple of years ago, won the massive stage up to the summit of the Stelvio. He won the massive climb of the day as well this afternoon, finishing at the summit of the Citadelle de Namur, which today was in fact also celebrating the Battle of Waterloo, which was 200 years ago, with a salvo from a Napoleonic cannon. Fortunately, it was a blank.
So the field are continuing to remain under pressure. We get to the cobblestone section at the Pont-à-Celle at the 120 kilometres point. We're 5.5 kilometres out according to a GPS there. But the pressure will stay on like this because they want to hold position at the front and let no one through from the back now. And Sky are up for this fight in this Tour de France.
They are, but also so too is Tinkoff Saxo, the team of Alberto Contador, because they were very close to the front end of the main field as well. This is Wilco Kelderman, had a very good opening individual time trial. He's been caught out a little bit in the crossfire. You can see how difficult it is to stay in contact because of the speed that everybody is lining up at the front end of the main field this afternoon. When we talk about the experience of the Tinkoff team, by the way, they have the most experienced team when it comes to participations in Paris-Roubaix. And in fact, one of their riders, Matteo Tosato, has ridden Paris-Roubaix on 15 occasions. 24 starts in Paris-Roubaix for Tinkoff and only 15 starts for the riders from Team Steyr. Only 11 starts for riders on Vincenzo Nibali's Astana squad. But let's not forget they were the winners of this stage last year, or a similar stage to this, with Lars Boomer in slightly different weather conditions. There's a canal from Brussels to Charleroi. We're pretty much still in the heart of the Wallonie, not too far away, by the way, to the road of Arsenal as we move down towards Juilly-le-Piéton, and that's where the cobblestones will actually be. 4.5 kilometers now, and the gap, although they're not really chasing here, this is not an organized chase, it's just the general speed of everybody scrambling to get to the front end of the peloton has taken up the average speed in that pack to in excess of 45 kilometers now. The gap has come from 9.5 minutes down to inside of 2. Excess of a mile of cobblestones. I have to say, Phil, they are pretty good cobblestones. I'd say they were almost a cobblestone boulevard, but still, you know, when you're not one of the bigger, heavier riders, you do bounce onto every little cobblestone head.
Well, the riders, those with any sense, will have come out and taken a look at this circuit, of course, and one rider who's practiced on the cobblestones, Nairo Quintana himself, has been to have a look at these hard stone, because those riders don't ride Paris-Roubaix, they hate it.
But I have to say, in Nairo Quintana's defence, Phil, he came up here in March to ride these cobblestones, but he also rode one or two of the cobblestone Belgian classics. And when we talked to his team management just before the start of this race, they said the funny thing is, you know, Nairo Quintana actually enjoyed it.
We are entering the 7th of 7 sectors. We count down as we do in Paris-Roubaix, and we've now got 1,800 metres of cobbled roads. Now these, as Paul has tried to explain, are pretty smooth cobbles that we don't think there's any pitfalls in them. And like all good pro cyclists, they ride down the middle and they use high gears and ride as fast as they can.
That's the important thing. That's the recipe for being able to ride well on the cobblestones. As long as you can keep the pace up nice and high, in excess of 25, 26 miles an hour, you can actually find a way where you glide over the cobblestones.
The crowd, they could be watching the Paris-Roubaix Classic, which is held in the second Sunday in April. But at least they get to watch them in short sleeves and not Wellington boots at this time of the year. The Belgian flags there, slight breeze pushing the riders across to our left. It's coming on their right shoulders at the moment, not troublesome at all. They went on though with a lead of 1:10 over Chris Froome in the main peloton. Here comes the peloton now. Not much room, is there, Paul?
There is certainly not very much room at all. Back with the 4 leaders now, and as I said, Phil, the most important thing is positioning. This is really an hors d'oeuvre, if you like, for the riders in the main field, because they're a long way. There's a big gap between this section of cobblestones and then the concentration of the final 6 cobblestone sections, where there's one almost every 5 or 6 miles in the last 30 miles of the race.
Well, these are the 4 leaders. The man in the group here, by that, look at this now. Mark Cavendish doing the job here. He's working for Tony Martin, who sat second for 3 days. Tony Martin, who came here hoping to be the first leader for Cavendish's team Ethics, and finished second to Rowan Dennis in the time trial. Dennis dropped away next day, but still there in second place was Tony Martin at the end of the day behind Cancellara. Yesterday, he missed by 600 tenths of a second. He still sits in second place, this time behind Chris Froome. Do not write Tony Martin off today.
Well, the one thing you have to appreciate, that people either love Mark Cavendish or they hate him, but the one thing I appreciate about Mark Cavendish, Phil, is he knows how to turn it around and work as a team helper for the squad. Whenever he wins, he's always the first to congratulate the team. When he loses, he accepts the responsibility himself. Today, he is riding as a helper to try and get Tony Martin, that little dream that he's had ever since he was a young guy in East Germany, growing up and looking at bike riding. He wants to have the yellow tunic on his shoulders if he can for a single day. This might be the last chance today, and he will try and grab it.
Well, the agricultural workers there made a bicycle of tractors, and those tractor tyres might be better for the bikes right now. As these boys wrestle with the cobblestones, they're heading towards the end of the sector number 7. 6 more to come. The 4 are clear. They went in with 1:10. They've come out at the moment with 59 seconds advantage over the main field.
Well, again, Phil, just to accentuate the fact, Team Astana, very clever, very astute, getting themselves a man into the breakaway as they did last year. And look how close to the front Vincenzo Nibali is. And look at the little gear that he's using there. He's the rider with the Italian flag around the middle and the red shoes. He floats over these cobblestones. It's a question of keeping the pace nice. And Tony Martin is the rider sitting in second place there. I'm sure today he's dreaming about the possibility of getting that lead away from Chris Froome. 1 second deficit at the start of the day. He'd certainly love to turn that around.
Well, Mark Cavendish is a great friend of Tony's, and he's going to work his heart out, not thinking of winning what would be in career history his 26th stage of the Tour de France. He's looking to try and finally nail the yellow jersey onto the shoulders of the German, who, by the way, has never worn yellow in the Tour de France.
Now, if you remember that crash from yesterday, Phil, sorry about that, Marco Haller, the rider you just saw at the back in the white jersey with the red bands around the middle, he went right over the top of the crash and landed on his feet, and he's been struggling to stay in contact with the main field this afternoon. In fact, the early reports were he'd been left a long way behind, but here he is fighting to stay in contact with the Tour de France.
The debut tour for him as well. He must wonder what has hit him after that crash yesterday, but he's still there and he's not going to give up. The Tour de France road conditions will get slightly easier after today. 54 seconds the gap, the long line as they come out of the cobbled sections of road through the town of Chapelle. 54 seconds, 117 kilometers still to go. The leaders hanging on, but it won't be long before they're joined, and then the race is going to really light up. Sharp left-hand bend for the riders, even the cobbles here in the town square as we race through the town of Chapelle. It's all go now, less than a minute spread across the field.
And by the way, in this part of the world, we're still actually in Belgium for the moment, but in this part of the world, a lot of these roads are interspersed with plenty of cobblestone sections. So the main field slowing down a fraction. I think they've got through what they wanted to do there. They've made their way through this first section of cobblestones. They've got around about 70 kilometers now before they get to the next section. The next section of cobblestones, section number 6 to go, is at 46 kilometers remaining. So they can calm down, lick their wounds a fraction now and wait to get ready for the final onslaught of the final cobblestone sections. Rider from Lotto Jumbo dropping back there, looking for a rear back tyre just at the back there on the far side. Greg Henderson, number 77, he was severely ripped up yesterday. He's up there alongside his teammate Adam Hansen. Hansen said, I've just got to try and nurse my body over the next couple of days. Well, these are not really the kind of days that you can nurse your body. Another teammate getting his hand up. This is the church of Saint-Martin, just down there to the right-hand side. Beautiful little church just at the end of section number 7.
These boys looking a little bit resigned. This is Perry Kemener in the breakaway. He said he's going to attack every day. He says he hasn't quite got great form yet, but he wants to continue attacking to find it. He's the best place rider in the breakaway. Never quite got to be leader on the road because he's 10 minutes 42 seconds back. And the 4 riders here in the break between them have ridden 12 Tours de France.
Well, Phil, now that we've got through that first section of cobblestones, I think these riders will be given a little bit more freedom. The fact that they were pulled in there was really because of the acceleration in the peloton as the big names tried to place themselves for the first assault on the cobbles. Now I think we'll have a little bit of a calm for the next hour or so, and then it'll start to be the same scenario leading up to the 6th section of cobbles down towards the finish line, which comes just inside of 50 kilometres remaining.
Yes, the that section of cobblestones is isolated now. This looks as though we have just a little problem here out there at the moment. It should sort itself out for Rigoberto Urán. He's had
Contador has stopped as well, according to Race Radio.
Now are they changing the bikes back again here?
No, Phil, this is the moment. Quintana stopped as well. You know, I was talking to somebody just before the start, and they were talking about one or two riders actually changing their bikes out on the course today, because a lot of the riders, a lot of the teams want to use their Paris-Roubaix style bike with a little bit of suspension in there.
Right, well, we need to see the saddle of Contador's bike. He has a little suspension under one of the saddles. We can't use the no number situation now because all the bikes have been fitted with a number, so we can't tell you when he's changed without seeing it physically happen.
Well, it'll be interesting to see just how Andre Greipel comes. He's been very attentive so far, and I think despite the fact that he played down his chances for the green jersey points competition, he would certainly like to keep that jersey on his shoulders for as long as possible.
Dangerous moments in the Tour de France. Here, just let the riders do the work. They just hang up the bag. And if a rider here, wait for this one. Well done, sir. And another one too. One more, here he comes. Thank you. So the order's taken and onwards we go. All looks pretty cool. Not too much panic amongst the field there. Smiles all round. And the clouds getting a little bit dark. At least the weather is nice and warm. Well, the food has just been taken on. The Sky team, primarily the rider in the white jersey there is Peter Kenyuk. They've had a really good Tour Sky at the moment. Haven't done anything wrong at all. They've got Chris Froome into the leader's yellow jersey, albeit by a second. 15th time in history he's worn yellow. That's a British record. And he can build on that on his way to Paris. Sky have been the team to look after him. He was so delighted with the team lineup when it was announced. It was the perfect team as far as he was concerned, and so far, Paul, that's exactly what they've been.
Well, they certainly have. They've done everything right so far. Funny little story. Well, a little problem at the back here. This is another machine. Now, this machine here, by the way, they're changing onto these black specialized bikes, and I had heard that Team Astana, 4 riders on Team Astana were going to change their bikes to this black bike, which is actually slightly more studied for the Paris-Roubaix. Now, you can just see the rear stay there, just at the back. There's a little kink in it. Well, that's a little suspension that takes the vibration out of the back, and you can see the slightly change in the fork at the front, and that also allows the riders to have a slight suspension in the front end. Now, I was told that 4 riders would change to these bikes in between the cobblestone sections. Vestra would be one of them, Nibali the other, and Lars Boom. Race Radio's already told us that Lars Boom has actually changed onto his Paris-Roubaix style bike.
Well, Contador's also changed.
So, well, that gets confirmation that a lot of teams are trying every little technological advantage they can find for the final hour of racing here, where there are 6 more sections of cobblestones to boot. Contador has changed his machine, but we're not sure whether or not he's changed to the machine that we were told about before the start, and it has a kind of a wedged suspension in the seat pin. Let's have a quick check here at this special machine that Louis Vestra has got. He changed that very quickly. They're in the small town of Binche, which is known for the bicycle race at Binche Tournai Binche. Many years ago, it was the heart of the Spanish domination of the northern part of Europe, a former mining and textile town. Now, you get a chance here just to have a look. Now, you can see the specialized S-Works machine that Vestra has got, and just have a quick study at the back there, and you can see that rather strange polymer insert. It's pretty much based on the Paris-Roubaix SL4 that Specialized developed a couple of years ago for Paris-Roubaix, and it just helps take out the vibration at the back end of the machine. And if you look at the front, they've got the same sort of polymer insert as well. So lots of action. Another rider involved in the nasty accidents yesterday, the tallest rider in the race, Johan van Sommeren. He got some really bad contusions to the lower part of his back, the left lumbar region. But like everybody else in this race, he wants to stay in for as long as possible. Some nasty accidents yesterday. William Bonnet fracturing his clavicle. He also had a slight injury to one of his cervical vertebrae as well, and underwent a surgical operation last night. Tom Dumoulin out with a broken shoulder, the man who was high up in the overall standings, fourth in the opening time trial. Simon Gerrans out with a broken wrist, and sadly the South African rider Daryl Impey, who was out of the race, didn't start this morning with a broken clavicle. So the advantage, well, it's hovering again. It crept up to 4 minutes, but they're not hanging around in the main field. They're about 50 kilometers to go. Look at the red and black jerseys there a little bit further down. Those are the teammates of TJ Van Garderen. I think he'd be very happy after 3 days of racing to be up in third place in the overall standings. Sadly, as teammate Rowan Dennis won the opening individual time trial, they had to leave him at the side of the road to once the race split up on the flat section over to the Zeeland finish. Thomas de Gendt has been a professional for quite some time now, de Gendt. Turned professional back in 2009. His best year really must have been 2012. He's the rider in the red jersey there. He won a stage in Paris-Nice back in 2011, but winning the mountaintop finish at the summit of the Great Stelvio Mountain, one of the iconic climbs of the Tour of Italy, is when he really came to prominence, came across to Lotto Soudal this year.
When a green jersey, you don't show up in an immediate sprint. So we can see who goes for that sprint is interested in green jersey, and plus they all have to spend energy on there. So it equals out. They all sprint against each other in the intermediate sprint, and they sprint again against each other on the finish line.
All right, well, at the moment, these 4 riders are approaching 1 kilometre to go for the sprint. They may not sprint, but there is a prize across the line, so there is money for the professionals as well as points. Vester, I don't think will challenge, because he's here for a different reason at the front. He's here to try and await the arrival of his leader, Vincenzo Nibali, and he hasn't done all of the work in this breakaway. He's left most of it to the other 3. 2 minutes 34 the gap, and Pediger Gemener is the rider on the far side.
Well, these guys are not so interested in the points when it comes into the intermediate sprint point here, Phil, but they are interested in the money, and the way that the euro is going against the dollar and the pound over the last 48 hours. The 1,500 euros has come out to be almost $1,500. And not far off 1,200 pounds.
Yep. About 71 pence is the exchange rate for the euro to the pound at the moment. Kevy, rather, you're seeing down there, that's the French way of saying the town of Ave. It's right on the French borders. We'll see maybe the customs post if they're still there.
You can see how much more intent this group is here, looking over the shoulder. Where's my leader? The rider in the black and white jersey of the Giant Alpecins, looking to see what the position of John Degenkolb is. Feel a bit sorry for Andre Greipel. He doesn't have his man Greg Henderson to lead him out. Henderson's at the back of the group, nursing his injuries from yesterday's accident, and obviously looking after Europe car on the front is Thomas Voeckler.
Yeah, Marcel Seeberg's the rider who's been given the job now to try and guide Greipel up towards the finishing line, but he's a big, strong man, and the Giant boys are looking to lead out John Degenkolb. Well, at the front here, they decide to go for the money, and there's Thomas de Gendt, who won the only one place available at the Citadel, the King of the Mountains. He's sharing with nobody. He's a Belgian, the breakaway. He's won everything today on the road. So it's de Gendt who gets the prize of 1,500 euros and 20 points in that green jersey competition.
And hopefully he's going to hang on for second place there, because the rider in the black and green jersey of Bretagne Sèche Environnement is getting himself €1,000. Thomas de Gent in the red jersey here, well, he's got €1,500 in the bank, but probably he'd be more keen to know the result of what happens behind, because he's thinking of his teammates, of course, Andre Greipel, who is the leader of that green jersey points competition.
Well, the lead has started up now, and it's Giant beginning to lead out. John Degenkolb is their boy as they go under 1,000 metres to go. They've got plenty of men up there to lead him out as well. Marcel Seeberg on the right here, trying to protect his man in green. He'll get a wheel for Greipel. Greipel's been pushed off the wheel of Seeberg at the moment, and you mustn't do that to the man we call the gorilla. He gets quite aggressive when it comes to sprinting as he runs in fourth wheel on the inside. Cavendish is here. He's the second light-coloured jersey there, and they've got themselves a little sprint.
Well, they're swinging off. That's Peter Sagan just towards the back, sitting on the wheel of Mark Cavendish. But this is almost a slow-motion sprint. They're a long way from the finishing line, still around about 500 metres. Greipel is up into fourth position. Now watch Mark Renshaw moving up on the right-hand side in the blue and white jersey of Ethics.
Well, he's taking Cavendish through, and Greipel has spotted it's Renshaw, so he will know that Cav's behind him. They're still waiting till the last possible at the back. And now taking the second wheel here, John Degenkolb. Greipel's got himself in a little bit of a mess here now as it breaks here. And as they race up towards the line, it's going to be Mark Cavendish possibly as he comes up towards the line, who might finish it off. I'm not too sure. There he goes, and now he's getting his sprinting. Yes, that'll teach you all, he says. I still can sprint.
A little bit of bumping and barging there between Andre Greipel and John Degenkolb. I think there'll be a few words over the next kilometre or so, but no doubt at all. Just watch Mark Cavendish in second position here. Now watch this bump as you see just coming across there. Degenkolb was looking for the slipstream of Mark Cavendish. Little touch of the shoulders, and he sort of saw it was the man leading the green jersey points competition. But the acceleration of Cavendish, well, makes it look quite easy.
Yeah, Coquard there, the Frenchman on the inside in that other green jersey. He's never going to beat Mark Cavendish, that's for sure. Now Sagan says, OK, we've got a gap, let's start working together and race away. And they're all having a laugh about that. Greipel says, don't be silly, Peter, we'll wait for the race.
Well, you can see the smile all over his face there. He's a great character. He's really, look at this. This is, come on, lads. No, don't be silly. Long way to go.
Top sprinters they are too, by goodness me. 5 of the best sprinters in the world there.
Over on the right-hand side, you can just about notice Team Sky looking after Chris Froome. And let's not forget last year, Phil, Chris Froome crashed before he got to the cobblestone section, so I don't think he shows any fear or trepidation for the cobblestones. I think he just wants to get up there and get himself into a good position. But it seems to be a little bit less nervous than it was 12 months ago because we're not in the really wet and treacherous conditions. But I am concerned about the fact when you look at those flags over to the right-hand side, how powerful the wind is. The rain's coming down.
I'm afraid they're not going to escape it. I've never known a meteorological centre so confident. They've moved the warning up to 100%. Before we came on air, and they scheduled it to arrive at around 5 o'clock. Well, it's 4:30, and it looks as like it's changing completely. This is exactly what the organisers and the riders did not want as we approach these last 6 sectors of cobblestones, because it is going to be very treacherous if they just become wet as the riders hit them.
Well, you can see the speed now as they accelerate and jostle for position to get into those cobblestones. I think the only safe thing that I can think about, Phil, is a lot of these cobbles are in the opposite direction to the way they are approached in the one-day classic Paris-Roubaix, especially. You see that little hand signal? That was an indication there to say, watch out, boys, there's some traffic furniture on the road. The advantage I think they've got is the cobblestone sections are slightly uphill, which will slow the riders down, so you won't have to be quite such a good bike handler. Peter Sagan is in that white jersey. I wonder if he's going to sacrifice himself for Alberto Contador. All of the men who want to win the Tour de France realise how important today's stage is.
That's exactly what he's doing as he continues to drive here with his team, as they now look to always see where their team leader is placed.
And you take your eye away from the clock for just a moment, and all of a sudden it's no longer 3 minutes, it's 1.5 minutes, the gap to the 4 leaders. A quick reminder: Louis Vestre of Astana, Thomas de Gent of Team Lotto, 1.5 minutes. It's now down to 1.5 minutes. Lotto coming up towards the front. Astana gone the wrong way round that roundabout. You've got to be so attentive. It's not a question of just riding at the front. You've got to try and figure out which way the race is going to unfold, because you go to the right hand side of a roundabout and you're in 50th position.
Will he ever come back, I wonder now? And there's also the extra complication of those traffic bumps now for slowing cars down, but not the Tour de France. In yellow, Chris Froome. Now the weather was atrocious on a stage similar to this. It was stage 5 last year, and Chris crashed out. Somebody from Tinkoff Saxo has had a flat tyre down there.
Well, that's the wrong time to have... Oh, there's a crash on the left-hand side. A rider from Astana went down.
Gone.
This, now you can start to see, Phil, that little bit of dampness is coming down. Just watch this, just up to the top left-hand side. All of a sudden, once your front wheel goes in a situation like this, you can't do a thing.
Well...
Well, just looking round there, and it looks very much as if one of the riders who went down there was a rider from Cannondale, just waiting to see who his teammate was. That was Dylan van Baarle, who was dropping back to wait for his teammate. Thomas Voeckler still sitting on the back of this group, but now the acceleration is coming thick and fast. And in fact, just having a quick look there, the rider who went down, in fact, was Dan Martin. That's Dan Martin, 160. He's trying to... There's something... He can't figure out what is wrong with his machine at all. It all started just up here. The rider from Astana went down, and then just behind, that's the crash with Dan Martin, and that happened because they saw the rider in front of them go down, touch of the brakes, and you go down too.
Well, let's face it, Paul, it's happened, in fact, like it did a year ago, because Chris Froome didn't crash on the cobbles. He crashed on the wet roads before we got to the cobblestones. And... we've had this crash here, and Dan Martin is the rider who has fallen as well. He's trying to get his bike sorted out. We've had Tessato down as the race is now split under the pressure of the crashes, just because we were approaching the town and there was a slight skim of rain on the floor.
Well, all it takes sometimes is for one rider to touch his brakes or lose his front wheel, and a number of riders go down, and that's, I think, why Dan Martin was involved in the crash just a little bit further behind that. But now the pressure is really on. We are 4 kilometers away from the 6th section of cobblestones to go before the finish. That's around 2.5 miles, and you can see the race is splitting up here under the pace. This is Lars Boom at the front in the turquoise jersey, the winner of this stage of the Tour de France last year, and sitting right behind him is the man he wants to lead onto the cobblestones, Vincenzo Nibali.
Well, Nibali continues to track on the wheel of the strong cyclo-cross rider Lars Boom, who won the cobble stage a year ago.
Tyler Farah looking over his shoulder. He's looking after his own teammates. A great sprinter. He raced very often in the north of France. Chris Froome right in the middle. Michael Kwiatkowski in the world champion. Right, there we go. Section number 6 to go. You can see, although it has started to rain, the dust is there. The flag of the Union flag of Great Britain flying very, very high. The leaders now are onto the cobblestone section. Their advantage only 30 seconds.
Well, that looks every bit like Paris-Roubaix, with the dust flying here and the crosswinds also blowing as we now start the work at the front, and gritting his teeth in the breakaway, Périgueux Quémeneur.
Well, this looks very much like the massive acceleration on the front end of the main field. The gap is down to 20 seconds.
Well, they've gone on with a 28-second advantage. I think it's the world champion Rui Costa here now, who has hit these cobblestones. They said these weren't bad, they look terrible to me. And now, as the peloton, it's every man for himself here.
Well, you can see how important it is, Phil. A few moments ago, we were riding down a road that was 20, 30 feet wide. It looks like Michael Kwiatkowski, the world champion, is the rider doing the pacemaking on the front.
Yeah, the former world champion I was talking about there in Costa. It's Kwiatkowski. He did a marvellous job yesterday for Tony Martin. It didn't quite work out at the end, but we'll see now. And it looks like Josh van Emden here is trying to go at the front as well. Well, this is an amazing race now. This is what we expected. Lotto Jumbo are piling on the pressure here now. They believe they can win this day.
They're thinking about Sepp van Mark on their move this afternoon. Daniele Benati is right up there. The leaders are now down to just 3 men, Phil. But more importantly, Vincenzo Nibali has got a man in this leading group of 3 on the left-hand side there. Louis Vestre looking over his shoulder to see where his man Vincenzo Nibali is.
Yes, and Wester is looking quite cool, calm and collected there, and he's seeing an advanced group of the Tour de France, not the complete peloton coming here. So his job is working out exactly as planned, because his leader Nibali is right up at the sharp end of this race.
Yes, behind, it's a question of catch up if you can, please. Look at that long line of riders, and there'll be a big gap now back to the team cars and groups behind. And that's why at this point you have to be very attentive as a team helper. If you see your team leader having a mechanical problem or a flat tire, you've got to stop alongside him to maybe change the wheel for him, because otherwise you'd wait 30 or 40 seconds at this stage for the team car to come up alongside you.
Our next section of cobblestones are coming around about the 40.5 kilometre point, so we're just 2 kilometres from that. And now again, Vestre looks over his shoulder. He's seen the peloton coming. To him it might appear the whole lot is there, but they're not. There's still a big group chasing.
Yep, but again, Vincenzo Nibali's got a strong team around him. Lotto Jumbo got a lot of riders in here as well over on the left-hand side in that sort of yellow-coloured jersey. Around the right-hand side of the roundabout, these are guys trying to get themselves back into the event. The yellow car there just getting itself a little bit involved in the organisation.
Yeah, he's putting the riders off their pedal there. He didn't mean to be there. He's been caught out as those riders, the field is split up. And Dan Martin trying to get back in that group of Cannondale Garmin riders just off the tail of this big peloton. He might come back yet, as these riders here, the one rider we can't see but is there on the right is Nibali. Sagan is also there. Danilo Wiese, the champion of Switzerland. The gap is closing down. 11 seconds. We're all going to hit the next sector of cobblestones as one.
Yeah, well, it's amazing to see Peter Sagan today seems to be riding as a team helper for Alberto Contador. So important is this stage. Everybody realises, Phil, this is not the stage where you win the Tour de France. That's going to be in the mountains a little bit further on. But this is the day when you can lose yourself a couple of minutes, which is why Peter Sagan, one of the most expensive riders on the international circuit, is today helping his teammate Alberto Contador.
Well, Team Sky at the moment, it looks like it's got Luke Rowe is the man at the sharp end of the race for them here. Just looking at the back, Brown was in the breakaway. He's now on the tail of the peloton, and there's more rain on the camera lens here as we head towards sector number 5.
This is a group a little bit further back. This is the chase now coming from Cannondale Garmin. They're trying to pace their man Dan Martin back into the race here this afternoon. These guys are going to have to play catch-up for the next hour of racing.
There's quite a few Sky riders back here too now who have missed the move. Leopold Koenig is also here for Team Sky.
Well, Pool's in there as well. The South African national champion is also in that group. Jans van Rensburg. You can see the South African flag, but at the front, Chris Froome and his riders from Team Sky are doing a very good job so far. And bear in mind what I told you a little bit earlier on, Phil, of all of the big favourites of the Tour de France, Chris Froome is the only one ever to have ridden that one-day classic, Paris-Roubaix.
40.6 kilometres to go. They're seeing the leaders for the first time in the best part of 180 kilometres. Just one man trying to defy them as we go on to sector number 5. Luke Rowe of Team Sky has closed it down for them. This is now our 3rd sector of cobblestones of 7. And here we go again. And Sky have got Chris Froome right up at the front.
Well, this is a slightly longer section of cobblestones, 1.6 kilometres from Kerenin to Verchin. This, in fact, was introduced into Paris-Roubaix, Phil, back in 1973. Look at the move now from Lars Boom of Team Astana.
But look who he's taking with him. Vincenzo Nibali, who was in yellow at this time last year, and cobblestones this year he's looking to try and get yellow.
Zdeněk Stybar is the rider from Etixx Quick-Step, getting onto the Astana train there. I would think that's Sepp van Mark trying to come across, but look at that, in 5th or 6th position. The yellow jersey of Chris Froome is just there.
Froome is right on the front here, and what team he's got left are with him there as well, John Degenkolb. But you've got to take your hat off to Nibali. He thought this plan out overnight, and he's laying it on the table right now.
Excuse me, but look at this. The yellow jersey is taking the responsibility of nailing bring them all back. This is section number 5 to go. Chris Froome is not afraid of the cobblestones at all here. That looks very much as if that's Tony Martin just in front of him, who's come right across the gap. Now, if you know anything about the sport of professional cycling, remember a name by the name of Peter van Petegem. He was the king of the Tour of Flanders and the king of Paris-Roubaix. Now, Vincenzo Nibali wanted to learn how to ride the cobblestones. He came up to Belgium and he rode these cobblestone sections 12 months ago with Peter van Petegem. He rides them now, Phil, like an expert.
He has learned well. Ride them down the front, pedal as hard as you can, and he's bouncing his way now towards the end of sector number 5. Chris Froome is doing what he can do, and he's very much in control just now. Remember, he's going into this race 1 second behind, ahead of Tony Martin. Martin's right there.
Well, I tell you what, when you see riders like Jens de Boucher, former Belgian national champion, struggling at the back on the cobblestones, and you see the climb of Chris Froome up towards the front, there is a serious reference. We're looking down this line. There's Alejandro Valverde from Movistar. We're looking further back. There is Edvald Boasson-Hagen. The man who appears to be a little bit further back is the one we're looking for. And there he is, 51, is Nairo Quintana. He's still in contact.
And so too is last year's runner-up, Jean-Christophe Perrault, is also in this group. This is every man for himself now. And the yellow jersey of Chris Froome right at the front, handling the patron of the Tour de France today. That's the way to keep your yellow jersey.
Ethics Quick-Step have got Stybar making the move there. Third position in that line is, excuse me, Mr. Tony Martin. Remember the guy we talked about who's been itching to get that yellow jersey. He's looking for a single second. He's looking for the move now. 38 kilometers to go. We've got 4 sections of cobblestones to go, and in fact in about 2 kilometers we're back onto another section, again a very long section of cobblestones introduced into Paris-Roubaix in 1973. A lot of people were very critical of the sprint of Mark Cavendish on that first day on the open road, but Cavendish himself said, look, this is not a computer game, guys. I have to race with my heart. I have to race with what I can do, which is available at the time. Here he's turning the books around and he's trying to throw it all on the line for his own teammate. And bear in mind, tomorrow is a sprint stage. He's not holding anything back today, Mark Cavendish. He's trying to get the yellow jersey for his mate, Tony Martin.
What a great bike race, because the boys in the yellow helmets here, right at the back of them is TJ Van Garderen, who ranks 3rd overall. The first 3 riders in the classification in the Tour de France are spread across the front. This is the world champion Kwiatkowski here. He's worked so hard for Tony Martin yesterday. It looks now as though he's feeling the pace.
Well, so far you can see the damage has been done by the first couple of sections of cobblestones, and they're starting to line themselves up to the next section, and that will be section number 4 to go, and it can't be too far away from where we are currently looking.
Well, we're about to enter sector 4 now of the cobblestones. It's right on us.
Pierre
As
Rolland.
we look here, still just hanging on, Pierre Rolland. He's lost a lot of time in the race this year. He'll be disappointed with that. He's still chasing to get up to the group. He's been split off again. We're onto the cobblestones now.
A man on the front there with the bandage on his face. If you remember yesterday, he's the rider who had, a little bit of a bump of shoulders there. That's Daniel Oss, is the rider from BMC. And he's not giving any quarter at all. Look at the flag, the German flag just behind these. This is section number 4 to go. 1.2 kilometers long. Again, a very good section of cobblestones. It is tough, but it was introduced, as I said, in 1973.
Well, they're gritting their teeth here, but keep your eye there, because TJ Van Garderen on Team BMC seemed to be the man who might surprise here by none other than Alberto Contador. Is right up there now. So too John Degenkolb, so too Chris Froome, so too Vincenzo Nibali, and so too Tony Martin. These boys are going onto these cobblestones shoulder to shoulder.
Well, it's quite strange, Phil, to see guys who are specialists at the one-day classics, the races like Paris-Roubaix, up at the front, but surrounded by riders like Vincenzo Nibali, Chris Froome, Alberto Contador, and of course still in this group at the moment, weighing in at only 56 kilograms, and I make that around about 120 pounds, and that of course is Nairo Quintana.
He's going to get bounced around, but he's still in this group. Remember, he came and took a good look at these cobblestones. In the past lose their Tour de France when they go over cobble roads, even though they're angels of the mountains, and he's concentrating on this day. Then when he gets down to the mountains, he can make the other guys suffer.
Well, I tell you what, Nairo Quintana doing a phenomenal job because
Greipel's in trouble.
when you think about riding the cobblestones, Phil, normally one of the big advantages you have is carrying a little bit of weight. This guy weighs in at 75 kilograms compared, he gives 20 kilograms to Nairo Quintana. Quintana must be bouncing from cobblestone to cobblestone, but he's still there.
So we're off sector 4, the helpers strategically placed to look after the men at the front.
Well, Greipel, as they say, légèrement distancé, as they say on race radio. Another man légèrement distancé, or slightly off the bike, is number 111, Michael Kwiatkowski, the reigning world champion. Just in front of him, he's got one of the riders from Katusha. That looks very much to me. Just trying to get my head around there. I think that, in fact, is Alexander Kristoff. Now, Alexander Kristoff, Sepp van Mark, the sign at the side of the road. This is Alexander Kristoff, number 96. He's going to have to try and struggle to get himself back into this. He would have been one of the big favourites before the start of today's race.
Well, he's got hot company, but I think he may have lost his form because he's won 18 races this year and he's gone over off the boil, I think, in this year's Tour so far. Haven't seen anything of him. And he's already lost ground too because of the hard-working riders at the front. Number 21 there as well is Thibaut Pinot. Third in the Tour de France last year. This is a stage he wants out of the way, but BMC are the team right now, and they're guiding their man, TJ Van Garderen, and with Greg Van Avermaet here, they could win the day as well.
Yes, that's what they're looking for this afternoon, but they're also trying to defend the position of TJ Van Garderen. Third overall at the moment. He's ahead of Alberto Contador, ahead of Vincenzo Nibali, and he'd like to stay that way all the way down to the mountains. And if, let's not forget, BMC Racing were to do a very good ride in the team time trial at the end of the first week, that would put TJ Van Garderen in a very strong position.
Into the
this stage, they looked after this stage last year. They came out with the victory. They've still got a lot of riders in there. There are 4 teammates in that group for Vincenzo Nibali. He's the rider with the turquoise jersey and the Italian flag around his middle. Not too far away on the far side, you can see the yellow jersey on the shoulders of Chris Froome. They're all scuttling up now because at 28 kilometers to go, they're about 1.5 kilometers away from the third section of cobblestones to go to the finish. I'd like to remind you, Phil, that the last section of cobblestones, by the way, is 3.7 kilometers long. That's 2.5 miles.
And that might well finish off the front end of the peloton. There's the main field. Now, there's a lot of cars in there, and there's a peloton coming up behind those cars. They'll use those cars to try and get through to these leaders, but they've got to do it quickly because we're very close to entering sector number 3 now of the Pavé. There's an awful lot of riders that specialise here in this breakaway.
Race Radio is saying a great return into this group has been done by Alexander Kristoff. After that flat tyre that he had a few moments ago, he was able to zigzag in and out and get himself back into contact. He will try and recover over the next few kilometres and think about the possibility of survival. Just have a look at the rider from Europcar there. You can see just in the middle of his handlebars those little silver things. Those are the brakes that the riders can use, a second set of brakes, so you can have your hands in the middle of the handlebars.
Well, Jens Voigt, you're watching these pictures. You've seen quite a big peloton at the front, but how do you assess it right now?
Well, it looks like some exciting racing here. I just saw John Degenkolb well hidden, well placed, but still hidden. His team doesn't have to do too much work. He's just coming to the front here now. He looks like he's want to give it his best shot today, and he's the man to look out for. But all the GC contenders are still there, still looking good. So let's see how that goes.
Yeah, that's a complicated thing, isn't it, Jensi? When you think about the leaders, they've got 2 races going on here. A lot of guys looking to win the stage victory, but they've got to come up and rub shoulders with men who are specialists over the cobblestones, and that could be risky over the last couple of sections.
Definitely, it will be stressful for everybody. Just like you say, I mean, you can see Froome and Contador battling it out with guys like John Degenkolb, who has clearly no interest in the GC. He just wants to win a stage today.
Well, we're looking at the moment. We just had a great image as we are watching here. Now watch Chris Froome on the right here. He got a little bit of a nudge there, and from Jacopo Guarnieri of Team Katusha. He got round okay. Nervous moments. Froome does have this style of sticking his elbows out when he races.
Well, funny, you know, when you talk to David Kinjer, the rider who discovered him in the back streets of Nairobi, he always says that Chris Froome looks like a small little bird trying to take off. Well, he certainly looked as if he'd got his wings tucked in right there. There's 3 more sections of cobblestones to go, and we're not much more than 500 or 600 meters away from section number 3 to go.
Well, Froome moves up, passing through underneath is number 41. That's Alberto Contador. Edvald Boasson-Hagen is the rider who's just hit the front for MGN Quebec. We're looking into the face of Geraint Thomas, and Jean-Christophe Perrault here is under pressure. Looking down now, it's a veritable charge here for Sector 3. Chris Froome is bumping off the riders, but holding position in that leader's yellow jersey. He's on the wheel of a teammate, Geraint Thomas. We're about to bounce onto Sector number 3, Saint-Piton.
Well, when you look at Chris Froome there, he's very, very isolated, having to do a lot of this pacemaking on his own. The second group is more than 42 seconds in arrears, but Froome at this point has got to prove why he's a great contender for the overall victory. There's Boasson-Hagen on the right-hand side, the Norwegian flag on his shoulders. John Degenkolb, number 81. Oops-a-daisy, you can see on the left-hand side there, Vincenzo Nibali. Excuse me, Tony Galopin said, I want that space. Watch this again. Ooh!
Galopin, who was off the back early today, not too happy with that either. We've got Boasson-Hagen on the other side. You've got Sepp Van Mark in the white jersey to the left, and they're gritting their teeth here. I'm not surprised, as Nibali is showing them all how to ride the cobbles. We haven't had an Italian do this since Francesco Moser.
Well, fantastic. He really has learned to ride. But what about that man there, number 41, Alberto Contador? There is Chris Froome. He's not really getting dropped just yet. He's trying to stay in contact. He's not panicking. He doesn't want to take too many risks. Mark Cavendish is still there as well.
He keeps his gears very, very low. Most of the other riders will ride a much higher gear now, but Quintana also here. This is an absolute battle today. People that hate these cobblestones but have the ability to win the Tour de France are doing things they've never done before.
Now we've got the race within the race. A little bit of a split there. Chris Froome has got across the gap. Nairo Quintana, thank you very much, popped across the gap there, sitting on Chris Froome's wheel. There's a big race going on now because John Degenkolb is in this leading group, but as soon as it starts to slow down, the turquoise jerseys of Team Astana come right back up to the front. Nibali really has learned to ride the cobblestones. For a man who can climb the mountains high enough, he can now climb right onto the crest, right in the middle of that cobblestone section.
Under the 25 kilometers to go, just over 15 miles from the finish here. It's still quite a large group, this, the infighting that's going on. It's all about time, and on this occasion it's about not losing any at all. Quintana is right up amongst it, and I can't think of a Colombian ever doing this before, but he's right at the sharp end. He wears 51 if you spot him.
Yep, you can see him. He's very close to the back wheel of Chris Froome there. He's keeping a very attentive. I'm just looking down that line of riders. I can only see one rider from Team Sky in this leading group. Giant Alpecin throwing it all on the line now for their man John Degenkolb. Section number 3 done and dusted. That leaves just 2 sections left to go. But as I've said to you, Phil, that last section is very, very long.
It hasn't done any damage either as they all come out there off the course. We've only got a half a mile, a kilometre. We're back on them again onto sector number 2 as what riders they have, and we've just got one Sky rider here, Ian Stannard, trying to get back. Greipel's in trouble again as he has also been unhitched at the back of the race. So too Grutsev. Strong man for Nibali, but it's up to Nibali. Look at this, the dust now. This stings your eyes, believe me.
But just look at the difference. When you crack on the cobbles, it looks as if you're going backwards there. You've got riders who are recovering, moving forward. Alberto Contador is still comfortably in this group, not too far behind his teammate Daniele Bernati. Also, the line and organisation of BMC in the black and red jerseys. They're looking after TJ Van Garderen. 10th to 12th position there is Vincenzo Nibali in the turquoise and the Italian bands around his mither. Moving himself up on the far side of the picture there is Chris Froome. They've got 2 sections to go, but Phil, these are the 2 longest sections. The next section is 3.7 kilometres long. The final section, 2.5 kilometres long.
Chris Froome still relying on just one teammate, Geraint Thomas down there. Team BMC are driving on here as they always do, but they've got TJ Van Garderen. Here we go, 2 sectors left as we hit the section of cobblestones again now, and Chris Froome has gone on just a little way down, but he can still see the front.
Well, you know, it is a good point to remind ourselves that when Chris Froome represented Kenya in the Commonwealth Games, he rode not only the road race and the time trial, but he also rode the mountain bike as well. So he knows how to handle his machine. But today I think he's got a little line of cobblestone sections on his stem, and he's crossing them off one by one.
Well, this looks like Thomas Lisa doing all the work now for Team Lotto Jumbo at the front here. Contador is right up here as well. Everybody holding position. The man that finished third in the Tour de France and just wants this to be all done and dusted is number 21, Thibaut Pinot. The UK flag flying there as the long thin line of the leads of the Tour. What this sector of cobblestones is not doing, it is not breaking up this big peloton. That's going to lead to a very tricky end in Combray, believe me.
Well, there you can see the leaders as we identify them from the helicopter. Froome up into about 10th or 15th position. Look, he's not trying to win the stage here this afternoon. The most important thing for him is to get through the stage and defend himself. Little study there, you can get a chance to see that many of these riders are using slightly larger tyres to get some comfort, if you can, out of these cobblestones. 181 just down to the right-hand side. That is Matthias Frank. On the far right-hand side, number 1, Vincenzo Nibali. 141, Bauke Mollema from Team Trek Factory Racing. This is a very, very select group, and there's still another section of cobblestones to go.
They're more than hanging on. We've still got two kilometres left on this particular section. That's an awful lot of cobblestones, and these boys now are gritting it into, as you can see by the face. We've still got Mark Cavendish down there too. Tony Martin is the man most likely to. If he can get his chance, he might try to go on the last sector of cobblestones. He's only looking for 1 second. As always this year, there's a 10-second bonus for the winner, 6 and 4. Froome only leads this race by 1 second.
Well, that's going to be very, very grippy on the run, and that's Daniel Oss doing the pacemaking there, scuttling up the outside. Number 31 is Chris Froome trying to reposition himself. Geraint Thomas is his teammate up alongside him. Thomas there just to look after him. Pierre Rolland, well, he's around about a minute behind. This is one of the nasty little corners, but as you can see, these are not the real rough and tumble cobblestones of Paris-Roubaix, but I can tell you from experience, if you start to lose a little bit of power, it feels as if you're bouncing over every one of those at a time.
Daniel Oss on the front now for Team BMC as he continues out. This is like Pinot. Thibaut Pinot is in trouble here. He's looking at his back wheel, but I think it's his legs have gone flat, not his tyres. He's losing contact at the moment as he tries to just hang on. He's still got another kilometre or so. No, he's off it. That'll give him a little bit of a drive towards the line. No, he's not. He's still got a kilometre, I think.
He's got a mechanical.
He has got a flat tyre. Well, that's a real shame because he was right there. Crucial moment now.
Well, just to remind you, Phil, there is still another kilometre of cobblestones left to go, and for Pinot there, he's going to have to get a spare wheel from the mechanics and from the neutral service vehicle. 131, just a little bit further up towards the front, is Robert Hessink.
Still Daniel Oss at the front, and behind him is Daniele Bernati, who's driving for Alberto Contador, who has kept himself in perfect position. He's got the strength and he's got the brain, and he can always monitor a race from close up. He's an incredible bike rider, is Alberto Contador, and I think that the Jumbo team have decided to just wait and see how this develops now.
The white jersey moving up on the left-hand side there is Peter Sagan, 24 years of age. Amazing. I just can't imagine how long Peter Sagan has been around, but he's still only 24 years of age. The winner this year of the Amgen Tour of California, and a man who I think really enjoys this kind of racing. This is a group a little bit further back, losing some time. This is the group of Pierre Rolland. You see the chaos of a stage like this.
And sadly, I think we're going to see in that group very soon now Thibaut Pinot, because unfortunately he's had a mechanical at the most crucial stage. The race is as fragile as that on the cobblestones. Daniel Oss at the front, followed by Bernati. Here is Pinot. He's got the service, but he's an awful long way behind, and I can understand the frustration.
Well, frustration yesterday. Well, it may well not be a repeat of last year. He mustn't panic at a time like this. You know, you've just got to get yourself back into some kind of frame of mind. He's had a spare wheel put into his machine like that, but psychologically, he seems to have cracked.
Yeah. No, it's very sad because his Tour de France, after third last year, is being lost right here, right now, I'm sad to say.
Well, don't discount him because, you know, Phil, there's still 2.5 weeks of racing to go before we get down towards the finish. On this day, Tinkoff Saxo are proving that they've got a lot of experience in here. By the way, 24 starts in Paris-Roubaix for the riders of Tinkoff Saxo. And, of course, let's not forget the team manager, Sean Yates, who's in the car, was also experienced at this one-day race.
Charging again, split on the sides of the road. This is the last stretch of cobbles before we go to Cambrai for the finish. And look at Chris Froome on the back wheel of Geraint Thomas. These boys have been superb yet again to keep their man in the right place.
In front of him, the first man for Team Sky's got the Irish colours around his sleeve there. That, of course, is Nicholas Roach. Behind Nicholas Roach, the man from Wales is Geraint. Tony Martin straight back up to the front end of this bike race. He knows that there's a chance, Phil. Yesterday, for 6/100ths of a second, he was away from taking the yellow jersey. He is dreaming about that today, but he needs to get himself a time bonus or a second difference between himself and Chris Froome at the finish line.
Tony Martin came to the time trial expecting to be the first yellow jersey. He finished second in the time trial. He didn't get it. Next day he tried again. He was beaten by a time bonus sprint from Cancellara. He didn't get it. He was second. Yesterday he lost the chance by 600 tenths of a second. The result was Chris Froome got the jersey. He now is trying for a fourth day to take the jersey. He doesn't care by what time gap. He just wants to wear yellow once in his life.
Oh, picking it right over the top there of that little bit of traffic furniture, and it's again BMC against the team from Sky. Sky's got their man Chris Froome up into 5th or 6th position. They're on to the final section of cobblestones, 2.3 kilometres long. That's around about 1.5 miles.
The final push on the last sector of cobblestones. Chris Froome has survived them all so far, and this is the day of his biggest nightmare here. Once this stage behind him, Chris is going to feel a little bit happier, and he's right there at the front end. Now, of the favourites, we've still got Vincenzo Nibali, last year's winner, right here. We've got TJ Van Garderen, the new challenger here. We've got Chris Froome, we've got Contador, we've got Quintana.
We've also got Alejandro Valverde moving up into 3rd position, the man who leads them all out there, Jakob Fuglsang. Froome is doing a phenomenal job of just keeping himself out of danger, but I keep just looking back to see if I can spot number 51, who for me has done the phenomenal ride. If he's still in contact after these long sections of cobblestones, Nairo Quintana. He had a little bit of a tough day yesterday, but now he's thinking about this one. Alejandro Valverde, what a stall that would be for the books if he got himself the victory on today's stage. He's currently sitting in 3rd place.
I'm delighted to say we haven't got the rain, which was more or less guaranteed by this section of the race. It's still looking good for the finish now, and it shouldn't spoil the race today. All of the men that matter in this year's Tour de France are here now. We've lost Thibaut Pinot, the French hope. He's losing over 2 minutes at the moment, and probably his chance at the podium in Paris in 2.5 weeks' time. As we now drop down a little ways, this is Michael Golas here of Quick-Step. He's done his job and he's slipping away.
Well, he's done his job, Phil. The most important thing for the riders from Etixx Quick-Step today was to replace Tony Martin back into this group. They are dreaming of the yellow jersey. They really want their German leader to get it. Look at Vincenzo Nibali making this acceleration once again.
Well, he was in yellow when he rode this stage. It was stage 5 last year, but look at the way this man, he's practiced these cobblestones, he's showing the boys he is up for the fight to defend his title in this year's Tour de France. Nibali is stretching them out again, and the others are really struggling to hold him.
Well, they are struggling, but they're clawing their way back. He stretched everybody out into a very long line, but how about this? What he's seen here, Phil, is the motorbike has slowed down a fraction, said, right, mate, I'll have a little bit of that, and there's another move going clear.
Well, this rider who's gone now is Stybar, who is a 3-time world cyclocross champion. He's got in the Tour de France this year. He's a perfect candidate for victory. He's riding on the roads he loved best, the ones with no surface, as he applies the pressure at the front.
It looks like Geraint Thomas going over the top there to try and get himself across to that small group of riders, but Chris Froome is also responding. There is Quintana, but he's still in contact.
He's hanging on to this group as best he can now, because those 2 attacks have hurt the field. Nibali himself has been forced to drop back a little bit as they start to get round him. Watch for the yellow jersey. Where is Chris Froome? He's up right at the front. Chris Froome just at the front. He's riding a brilliant bike race this year, coming up 10k out.
Looks like Greg van Avermaet has made the move, but that's Geraint Thomas coming over the top there. It looks over his shoulder. Yep, I've got Chris Froome with me. I've got a gap to everybody else. I'm going to put the hammer down. Cobblestones done and dusted for the afternoon, but now we've got 10 kilometres to go. That's 6 miles. That's going to take them at speeds like this around about 13 minutes, but the damage is now starting to take effect.
Well, what a difference a year makes. Chris Froome down and out on the cobble stage last year with a broken wrist, his tour done and dusted 5 days in. Here we are 4 days in now, and his teammate Geraint Thomas is looking to lead him and gain time over the rest. Look at that. Geraint Thomas has hooked up now with his captain. There is a gap. Nibali is there right at the back, but this is a move. Geraint Thomas has just got to keep going now.
Well, that's what he's got to do. This man, you know, is an Olympic gold medalist back in 2012, but he's not thinking about the track. He's not thinking about anything now. 10 kilometres to go. He looks over his shoulder and says, right, I've got Chris Froome. This is a chance to grab some time. Contador will be in this group. He's lost around about 10 or 15 seconds, but it's Peter Sagan on the front who is doing the work now as a teammate to pull it all back together.
Bosenhagen is back there as well, the Norwegian, but Thomas now is going to bury himself to try and give some more vital seconds here to Chris Froome. And you know, Nibali at the back should really come up and share the pace. He needs the time as well. 3, 6, 8 riders try to establish at the moment. Thomas looks over. And now Froome has decided to go. Thomas says, I've done all I can do, Chris. It's up to you now, and stretch him as best you can.
Well, he's making this move, but I'm not sure that this is the right time to make a move like this, because if he looks over his shoulder and can see the organisation of the size of the group behind, they're being led by a certain guy by the name of Peter Sagan. This is energy that he maybe needs to conserve. Don't forget, Phil, this is a 3-week bike race. Efforts like this you can pay for further down the road. That second group on the road there, it's going to come back.
Steibar's up here. Nibali's got his head screwed on. You see, Nibali's gone with the move, but he's not giving it any energy. He knows it's not going to work. That was a great piece of riding by Geraint Thomas, but I think you should call the truce, lads, and let them back and live to fight another day here. There's the composition of the group. Nibali's the big man. Valverde's the big danger to win. So too Greg van Avermaet and Degenkolb. Those boys should be doing the racing. They want to win the stage.
Look behind and just see how many riders there are there from Tinkoff Saxo. They are looking after the interests of Alberto Contador. Yes, he got caught out a little bit by that acceleration, but now he's got his teammates mustered all around him. Look at this for organisation. Number 43 there, Daniele Benatti. He's ridden Paris-Roubaix so many times in the past. He's trying to pace his man back up there. Joaquim Rodriguez is there. 51 is there as well. Nairo Quintana. Rui Costa is there at the back trying to get himself into contention. What a day of racing we've seen this afternoon, when men who normally would not like the cobblestones, Peter Sagan has just moved to the back a little bit because he did a very long hard turn to pull Contador back into this movement.
Well, it's come back together at the front end of the race. There'll be a rethink now at the moment. Steibar just to our left has dropped back out of the front of the action just for the minute. And Chris Froome is still there on a day that took him out of the Tour de France 12 months ago. He's heading to the finish, 7.7 kilometres in the yellow jersey.
Well, I just noticed Andrew Talansky, big turn done by this man in the white jersey. Peter Sagan did an incredible job there to pull back his teammate Alberto Contador. There you can see number 51, Nairo Quintana. He'll have a few stories to tell the lads around the dinner table here this afternoon, but that is not a very good group, a very large group at all.
I make it 35 riders in this front group now, and they're all assessing just which ones have lost their position here. Well, the French have lost all their position except Warren Barguil, the new youngster in the race. He's up here in this group and could be the top Frenchman now, because the podium finishes last year, Perrault and Pinot, are not up here anymore.
Well, Chris Froome leads this race by a single second. There are 10 seconds time bonus available for the first rider to cross the line. The only man who can overtake Chris Froome in the standings is Tony Martin. Martin needs to finish inside of the top 3, but looking at the quality of this group, he's going to have a very, very difficult time. Look at that, sitting on the wheel of the champion of Spain there, Nairo Quintana, is looking very, very good on a flat stage like this.
He's an awful lot. You can't lose 3 minutes and think to win the Tour. Well, it's still a tricky running. Don't forget, we've got a big roundabout to negotiate and 2 very sharp right-angle bends. The last one about 350, 400 metres before the line.
I'm not sure if you were just looking at that. That was John Degenkolb, number 81, having a quick lap. Now, Tony Martin.
Well, he had to do this. He's looking for 1 second. Tony Martin is now the virtual leader on the road simply by the attack. And if anybody can do this, the greatest time trialist in the world can. I saw him win a stage of the Tour de Beijing. He rode the field off his back wheel and they just looked at him and could not catch him. And look at that gap he's opened.
9 times out of 10, Phil, I will tell you, this is impossible to do at around about 3 kilometres to go. But Tony Martin is a special guy. He's got Geraint Thomas now. They've got to get themselves organised if they want to chase him back. There's a lot of people. If you can be in front of your TV screen right now, start blowing on the back wheel of Tony Martin there to see if you can give him a little bit of help to get him to the finishing line. This is a phenomenal move. He was so close on day 1. He lost for 5 seconds. Day 2, he was a second down on getting the yellow jersey. Yesterday, he was hundredths of a second away from getting himself the yellow jersey. Now, Giant Alpecin have got to do something very, very special to get themselves organised. But this is a fantastic move.
Tony Martin is the only man capable. The world time trial champion 3 years straight between 11 and 13. And everybody expected this who knew Tony Martin. And there's a lot of teammates here who won't react. Tony Martin can do this. He only needs 1 second, but if he wins, of course, he gets 10 anyway. And, well, I don't think Chris Froome will be too unhappy if he loses the responsibility of the yellow just for now.
Well, normally, Phil, on a normal flat stage, this would be impossible. You saw he swings around the car motorbike there, gets a little bit of a draft from the back end of that motorbike. He'll use everything he can. 2 kilometres to go. He's got around about a 2-minute and 10-second effort to make to get himself not the victory. He doesn't care about the victory of the stage. He wants yellow. He wants to have a 1-second gap over the rest of the main field, and he wants to get that time, but look at it.
And Sinkeldam is trying to chase there, but you see Chris Froome will use the tactic, I'm not going to chase Tony Martin, he can have my yellow jersey because he can't climb and I'll beat him in the mountains, so he's not a danger to the future winner of the Tour de France, and he takes all of the pressure away from Team Sky, so they won't chase and neither will his teammates. I think he'll do it. He just comes to the roundabout at 1 kilometre just ahead. He's on the run in, but he's free to fly, and this will be of his 61 victories so far. The 62nd will be the sweetest.
1,000 metres to go, and let's not forget, they're coming very, very close to him. There's a very nasty right-hand bend at around about 500 metres to go. It's so tough for him. You want to push him along at a moment like this. This man has been the hero of the first 3 days. He just wants the yellow jersey.
For 3 days he sat in second place while 3 different riders jumped over him and grabbed yellow, and the only way he solved that problem is to do this. His mouth is wide open. This is a very sharp left-hander here, and it's slightly uphill if I remember rightly. Yes, it is, and he comes round now, a lonely German in the centre of Cambrai where the Tour de France has never finished, and this is the only man capable of riding everybody off the wheel, and he's done it.
Well, his teammates are trying to slow them down around these corners. This is a slight drag up towards the finish line. He keeps looking over his shoulder. He's got to bury himself at a moment like this. Again, more cobblestones just to weaken his legs a fraction more. 400 metres to go. The crowd are cheering this man on.
He's
done the impossible.
He's heading up to the line. The sprinters started behind. But as Tony Martin grits his teeth, they've all left it too late. He needs no time gap. He gets a 10-second bonus. He'll lead the Tour by at least 9 tonight. Boasson Hagen of Team NTN Quebec, and he's storming off that bend. Tony Martin salute. Has he got room for it? Yes, I have. I've done it. It took me 4 days, but yellow is mine. And right on the line, Degenkolb tried to snatch it from Greg Van Avermaet. Well, I think there won't be a dry eye in the house for Tony Martin.
Phil, I'm pretty sure you once told me that fairy tales never come true. Well, that was a fairy tale ending today. The only thing that he could do was get away from that leading group. And what a start, what a move. Brilliant.
It was really great.
Well, what a move. As I say, there are not very many in professional cycling could have made that move and held it all the way to the finish, and there will not be a dry. Look at the face. There it is. He knew what he had to do. He needed a 1 second time gap to begin with, but when he crosses the line, he gets himself a 10-second time bonus and the victory to boot, and that will put him at the top of the overall standings tonight. Amazing. 5 seconds down on day 1. 1 second down on day 2, a fraction of a second down on day 3, and now he leads the Tour de France by 9 seconds, and maybe a little bit more if they give a time split in the sprint towards the finish. I don't think Chris Froome will be too upset about that, because he will be happy about the way he managed to get himself through the stage today.
Well, the clock as they head up towards the side is now over 3 minutes. Counting. We're just waiting for confirmation. In fact, it stopped completely just now. So we'll see what it comes to as they come up to the line.
You just see Thibaut Pinot there, Phil, just a little bit further back in that red, white and blue jersey of FDJ. He's
3 minutes 19 they lost, Paul. That's a lot.
It's a huge chunk of time for him to lose on a day like today, but the day's behind them. Now he's got to think forward and start about thinking of an aggressive move. But this is what the stage was all about. I mean, that to me, one of the magical moments of the sport of professional cycling. What a move. He did it. I would say 9 times out of 10, Phil, that move is not going to work. But today was a special stage.
All the tactics worked in his favour. He's the only man that could pull off such a move anyway and survive. And as I say, it's not unprecedented by Tony. Just happens to be the most important day outside of his world titles of his career.
And Phil, and this makes up for the number of times that Tony Martin has been in the long breakaways and been caught at 30 or 40 metres to go. Look at that. Everybody's there. Mark Cavendish.
Yeah, so much. Cav really rode like a champion out there. At the start of the pavé, it was Cavendish who was driving the bunch in favour of Tony.
What a beast.
Rigoberto ran high position overall, yet he stopped to help Martin when he had a bike problem. This was a team effort, 100%.
Superb. There's only a few guys can do that. There's confirmation. Nice gap. 12 seconds over Chris Froome.
Yep, and I think Froome will be equally as happy. They don't want to defend that Maillot Jaune all the way down to the mountains. They've got the pressure off now. Chris sits in second place at 12 seconds. Van Garderen has held on to third. Galopin has held on to fourth. Sagan has held on to fifth. So basically, the leaders all rode pretty well on the cobblestones today to defend their positions.
No, they certainly did. What a great day of racing. Everybody, I think, will be... unlike last year, 12 months ago, which was a devastating stage for many of the teams, tonight, I think there'll be a lot of fun and discussions around the hotel tables, with plenty of stories of good luck and bad luck, and a great day of racing.